This is 5 Live Formula One with Jenny Gow.
Hello and welcome to Imola. It's round 2, the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, and I can't say I've been more excited for a Formula One race, maybe ever. Is that going too far? Let's introduce our commentary team, because I'm sure they'll tell me if I'm going wide of the mark. First of all, it is Jack Nichols, our lead commentator. 10 minutes to go until the start of the race. Jack, please sound not wide of the mark.
I'm a bit disappointed, actually, because I was...
Come on.
No,
Come on.
No, I know. This is fantastic. There is rain in Imola. Now, that was a joke. It is a bit... We had quite a tasty Grand Prix on our hands overall if it was going to be a dry race, but now you've got a situation where half of the track is actually really quite sopping wet. Some of it is bone dry and some of it is just a little bit damp. So all of the strategy, permutations and predictions that we spoke about yesterday on the podcast, yesterday after qualifying, this morning in the preview of the race, that's all out of the window. Everybody's going to be starting on some form of wet weather tyre. We're going to have 63 laps of fascinating racing. Hamilton on pole, Perez second, Verstappen third, Leclerc fourth, Gasly fifth. And it's just a case of what's going to happen. Let's wait and see.
Yeah, it's really exciting. As you said, Hamilton is the man in pole position. His 99th pole, and alongside him, Perez. Sergio Perez. It's the wrong Red Bull, surely, Jolyon?
Well, in some ways, is it the right Red Bull? They've got a second driver that can actually be up there and out-qualify Max Verstappen. So, yeah, we think Verstappen will be the big threat, probably for the race and almost certainly for the season. But huge for Red Bull that Perez got himself up on the front row. Huge for Perez as well to bounce back from a trickier weekend in Bahrain. But it's not easy for him. He was actually due to be starting on the soft tyre because that's what he went through Q2 on. But right now, you need a full wet for Sector 1, you need an intermediate for the middle sector and a slick for Sector 3, I think, with how they went to the grid. It's not going to be dries for the start. So the strategy element from yesterday goes out the window. And this is going to be absolutely fascinating.
It's a really long run down to what you would call, Jolyon, the first turn. 880 metres is actually turn 2. In these conditions, let's say you're Sergio Perez, you're starting on the front row for the first time. You know the man alongside you, Lewis Hamilton, his Mercedes, is starting on the front row for the 160th time. It's a big difference. How do you mentally prepare for that, and how do you prepare for these conditions which seem impossible?
Got to keep it on the track. That's the main thing. The condition, the wettest part of the circuit is the first sector, and that's obviously where they're going to be all bunched together, coming in with cold tyres and probably tyres that are not suitable for that sector. From what we've seen on the way to the grid, you need a full wet to get through there. Fernando Alonso actually has hit the barrier on the way to the grid on an intermediate tyre. Now, luckily for him, he was able to get back out of that, come through the pits and change his front wing, which was damaged. But that shows how slippery it is when Fernando Alonso's dropping it on an inter, just getting round the grid. That shows that it's full wets in that sector. It's soaking. But if you put on the full wets for Sector 1, you're going to chew them up on the drier part of Sector 2 and 3, and they're going to last 2 laps before they themselves are basically slicks. So the balance is going to be tough. It's probably going to be an intermediate start for everyone as a result, but the grip level is going to be treacherous.
So we have 6.5 minutes until the start of the race, roughly. We've got little gazebos. Let's hear team radio.
Lewis, in terms of forecast, expecting maybe another little shower 5 or 10 minutes in, but it's only going to be light in terms of intensity from this point in. We think we're not going to get any more of the heavy rain.
Lovely. Thank you, Peter Bonington. That's Lewis Hamilton's race engineer giving us a little bit of a weather update. Gazebo's starting to come down now over the 20 cars that are on the grid. Hamilton from Perez, then it's Verstappen, Leclerc, Gasly, Ricciardo, Norris, Bottas, Ocon and Stroll are your top 10, with George Russell starting in 12th place. And it must be nervous times at this point. Jack, we've already seen some issues for some of the drivers. We've spoken about Alonso. There's issues for Bottas with a puncture. There's a lot going on this grid. It's busy.
Yeah, Alonso's was a fairly quick fix. He went off at Tosa, nudged the wall, and they just changed his front wing in the garage, and he's now gone to the grid. The Aston Martin, especially of Stroll, had a rear brake fire, so they've had to seemingly change the brakes on the grid, which they are still working to finish at the moment. In fact, that Aston Martin is the only one with the sort of gazebo still up over it, so they must be still working on it. It's also, that message from Pete Bonington is notable because I think it's stopped raining now pretty much everywhere on the track. The first sector, it doesn't appear to be raining. It is still wet, and it is a bit damp now at the final corners at Rivazza too. So it's a bit damper there than it was when they first went to the grid. But the rain itself appears to have stopped, and as Pete Bonington said, they're expecting another shower in 5 or 10 minutes, but only a little one.
But it's not too bad in other areas. The starting grid is not too bad. There's been drizzle that has wet it, but the turn 1 is where it's really still very wet. We just had another shot of it. There's got to be a reasonable chance of skittles down at turn 1 because the drivers are going to come off the line, they're going to feel reasonable grip, and then it comes to that braking area for Tamburello, and the grip level's just not going to be there anymore. So all it takes is one driver somewhere in the midfield to be even 1 or 2 meters too ambitious on the brakes. They're going to just sail straight into turn 1, and we could have some collateral damage of that as well. But it's rule number 1 here is get your car through that first sector on the first lap, and the track, barring that light rain, we'll see what comes of that, but it should just get better and better and dry up generally.
Well, what we thought was going to be a one-stop race with a relatively mundane strategy, because you can only stop once and it's a very long pit lane here, almost 30 seconds to come in and do a pit stop in live racing. The rain coming down before this race has meant that that's all mixed up. Just to remind you, Hamilton does lead championship-wise. He's got 25 points. Max Verstappen after the Bahrain Grand Prix on 18, and Bottas on 16 points with Norris on 12 and Perez on 10. That's your top 5. There's so much to play for. 23 races. We haven't even mentioned Miami. We'll get onto that at some point if we've got time and the race isn't as exciting as we think it's going to be. But this is enough to get even a non-F1 fan, Jolien, pumped.
I'm pumped. Absolutely.
Yeah, but you are an F1 fan.
Yeah, but you know, I'm still more excited for this than the average race. This is an old school circuit. We haven't even mentioned the track particularly, other than the conditions, but it's a circuit where we've seen incident in the dry. Yuki Tsunoda had a big crash in qualifying yesterday. We've had Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari hitting the wall. Nicholas Latifi's been off in practice. Nikita Mazepin's been off. All the drivers from the top to the bottom of the grid have had their moments. It's a punishing circuit. You add in the conditions that are going to be very, very tough, and there could be an element of attrition. We could still see a one-stop race. If the drivers can get through the intermediate phase at the start, then they can stick on a set of slicks and they might go to the end. The degradation's been pretty low. The temperature's very low right now, less than 10 degrees out there, air temperature, under 20 degrees track temperature. So the tyres will hang on if they can go enough into the race on their inters. But looks like some of the drivers are starting on full wets.
Yeah, Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon, Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin are starting on the full wet weather tyre as opposed to the intermediates. Sebastian Vettel, I believe, is getting pushed off the grid as well, so he might not be starting the Grand Prix on the grid. He's been pushed back into the pit lane, so that's an interest. Maybe they're still not fully happy with the...
So listen, we're going to have to start from the pit lane. We're going to push the car to the pit lane, but not finished in time.
Right, they weren't finished replacing or repairing the brakes on Sebastian Vettel's Aston Martin in time. Looks like they did manage to fix Stroll, and I think it's going to be a race start, not a safety car start, because there's been no message that it'll be a safety car start, so it looks as though the cars will start on the grid.
63 laps waiting for you. This is going to be a thriller. Lando Norris wanted to talk about him. Bad day yesterday in the office, he said. I let everyone down. He'll start P7 in his McLaren. There are chances for everybody on a wet Imola track that's drying. Let's hand you over to our commentary team for this race. It is Jolien Palmer and Jack Nicholls.
Thank you very much, Jenny. The cars are starting to rev up. Sergio Perez on the front row of the grid for the first time in his Formula One career. Lewis Hamilton on pole position for the 99th time in his Formula One career. A reminder that Gasly, Ocon, Schumacher and Mazepin are starting on the full wet tyres. Gasly, that's an interesting one. Fair enough for Mazepin and Schumacher starting in 18th and 19th, do something a bit different, see what happens. But I think Gasly in 5th on the full wets is a toughie. Yuki Tsunoda is on the intermediates at the back of the field. 2 lights left before the formation lap gets underway in a moment, and we'll take you down through the full grid, because it is going to be a fascinating hour and a half, hour and 45. Who knows if the conditions get worse, maybe 2 hours of racing here on 5 Live Sports Extra. It is 2 o'clock, the formation lap starts. This is the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. So the grid is Lewis Hamilton on pole position, Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen, the 2 Red Bulls, are on 2nd and 3rd, with Charles Leclerc 4th on the grid. Pierre Gasly is 5th, the 2 McLarens of Ricciardo and Norris 6th and 7th, Bottas, Ocon, Stroll the top 10, Sainz, Russell, Vettel, Latifi, Alonso the top 15, Raikkonen, Giovinazzi, Schumacher, Mazepin and Tsunoda the 20 drivers. The spray out there, Jolie and Palmer, is massive.
A lot of water down in that first sector. Lewis Hamilton, the pole sitter, already coming on the power out of Toza, and you already heard there a little bit of wheel spin coming up the hill. It's very wet coming out of Toza up to Piratella, and it's the second half of the track that was drier when they were going round to the grid half an hour ago. Pierre Gasly on the wets then, that's a driver choice. That's a cautious driver choice, because, as I was saying earlier, he's got a high chance of just chewing them up on the drier parts of the track. They'll be better for the first sector, and he might have a load of grip. Oh, spinner, Leclerc.
Charles Leclerc off, and he's in the gravel trap at Aqua Minerale. He manages to get out. I'm having flashbacks to 1991, where Alain Prost spun off at Imola on the formation lap in a Ferrari in wet conditions and couldn't get going again. Leclerc has only lost a couple of places, but only 1 to Pierre Gasly, so he should be able to just repass Gasly and retake his position on the grid.
He's got to get back past before the safety car line, which is coming up quite quickly for him. He spun Aqua Minerale, got on the white line on the outside of the second part, turning in, and managed to actually rejoin very quickly. The field's very spread out, and Leclerc does nip back past Gasly, so got away with that one on the formation lap. Leclerc starting 4th, but that shows how slippery it is on the inters. Gasly must have chuckled on the full wet as he went past there.
But now they come out of the final couple of corners at Rivazza, and it is pretty dry. Lewis Hamilton now starting to back the field up. Hamilton won the 2020 race here at Imola. The sound you can hear is Charles Leclerc wheel spinning that tyre to try and get any kind of temperature into these intermediate tyres that he possibly can, as he gets ready to line up on the grid. And this is going to be, Jenny, a fascinating 63 laps.
Yeah, absolutely. All eyes now looking at the starting grid. Hamilton and Perez, the front row. The first time Perez has ever had a front row start in Formula One.
Thank you, Mark. The cars are lined up on the grid in raining conditions in Imola, just south of Bologna, and the final car of Yuki Tsunoda is just lining up at the back of the field. Lewis Hamilton is on pole position. Sergio Perez is alongside him on the front row in the Red Bull. Then it's Max Verstappen 3rd, Charles Leclerc in 4th in the Red Bull and Ferrari respectively. The other Mercedes of Valtteri Bottas is down in 8th position. This is going to be a very slippery start to the Grand Prix, and it gets underway now, and it's not a particularly good start from Hamilton. Max Verstappen has got the best getaway in the Red Bull, and he looks to the inside, and they're 3 wide coming down to the first corner. Verstappen on the inside of the Red Bull. Is he going to take the lead of the race away from Lewis Hamilton? They go side by side into the first corner. They bang wheels, and Hamilton bounces over the curbs. He's off on the grass on the other side. Verstappen leads. Hamilton still holds on to 2nd position, but he's now got Sergio Perez in the other Red Bull trying to pass him too. But that's the first time we've seen Hamilton and Verstappen wheel to wheel, and Jolie and Palmer, Verstappen wasn't giving him an inch.
Now, Hamilton fought maybe too hard there. He had barely any space on the outside at turn 1, went bouncing over the curbs, and I think something came off his car. Maybe a bit of front wing damage for Hamilton, or floor damage, but definitely a little bit of debris flew off Hamilton's car. He's still in 2nd. Here's his radio.
I don't know if I've got damage. He pushed me right wide in turn 1.
So Hamilton doesn't know if he's got damage. He's running in 2nd place. He's still in the Grand Prix. Max Verstappen leading, Mark. 3rd is Sergio Perez. Charles Leclerc is 4th. Daniel Ricciardo has got him into 5th place in the McLaren, and off again goes Leclerc. At the 2nd Aqua Minerale corner, the same as he did before, and spinning into the gravel trap is Nicholas Latifi. Latifi manages to get out of it in the Williams. He'd made quite good progress, but he's back on the track now, dropping down the order. Meanwhile, Leclerc is having to fight with Lance Stroll, and he has to cut across the grass at the top of the hill. Bottas is sliding, coming out of the Variante Alta at the top of the hill as well. Verstappen still leading. There's a yellow flag out there, so someone has come to grief in the middle sector as they drop down the hill now into Ravazza, and it's Latifi again. Safety car deployed. Nicholas Latifi appears to have hit the wall pretty hard, and that is on the run up the hill into the Variante Alta.
He spun at Acqua Minerale, got going again, and then very quickly has spun again, basically on the straight as it crests out of Acqua Minerale. Maybe cold tyres having been in the gravel already.
Oh no, collision is it with Mazepin?
Oh, he's hit Mazepin, yeah. Oh, big shunt actually. Mazepin had a nose in on the inside. Latifi came across, and in the end drove Mazepin. Basically, he had nowhere to go and flicked Latifi into the wall. Big impact, but it looks like he's okay.
So the order is, as into the pits comes Esteban Ocon, the order to change back to the intermediates, presumably, because he started on the wet weather tyre. He's now going out again on intermediate, so seemingly realising that was an incorrect decision. The order is Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, the top three. So Leclerc has got ahead of Perez somehow. Did we see that? Leclerc
was struggling, defending from Stroll. So Perez, Ricciardo and Gasly have all lost out.
No, what it was Sainz battling with Stroll. I set the wrong car. That's what happened there.
That'll do it then.
Yeah. So Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Perez, Ricciardo, the top 5. Gasly, Stroll, Sainz, Norris, Bottas, the top 10. And then it is Russell, Raikkonen, Giovinazzi, Ocon, Tsunoda, the top 15.
That doesn't feel great.
It looks like we've got damage to front wing end plate there, Lewis, but we'll keep you updated on the balance shift.
Outside of that, it's Schumacher, Alonso, Vettel and Mazepin, the 19 runners. Latifi in the wall and out of the Grand Prix. So that was the first time we have seen Verstappen and Hamilton wheel to wheel. It means something, and neither of them were giving in. Verstappen got a rocket start, managed to get up on the inside of Hamilton, squeezed through on the one run towards Tamburello, and Hamilton thought, I'm going to try and hang it on around the outside here, which was always ambitious, and he was there though. I don't know, did Verstappen squeeze him off the circuit?
No. Hamilton's he's very brave there, and when you put yourself on the outside from there, he was slightly behind Verstappen coming into the corner. You got to remember, Jack, this is soaking conditions on intermediate tyres. You're going to get run wide. For the lead of the Grand Prix, you've got to expect that you're going to be bundled over that exit curb if you're trying an opportunistic move with an inch of space between you, Verstappen and the grass. It was always going to happen. I've never seen Hamilton fight that hard into turn one. It meant a lot to him, but it was just a little bit brave, I think, and that was always going to be the end result. There's no way Verstappen was going to let him round the outside of Tamburello. He got a flying start, got neatly up the inside, and Hamilton was being a bit opportunistic, too much so, and he launched over the sausage curbs.
I thought he was going into the back of Verstappen at that point.
Thought it was going to be a crash.
Yeah.
I thought that had crash written all over it between Verstappen and Hamilton. Perez probably thought so as well, because he left them very much to it on the way down to the first braking zone. But he didn't get his wish.
So Perez got all out of shape coming through the Variante Alta. That's how Charles Leclerc got past. What caught me out with Sainz, if anyone's interested, is that last year and for the last few years, it has been the yellow roll hoop cover for Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. So I saw that and thought it was Leclerc, but they've swapped obviously for this year. So it was Carlos Sainz fighting. Now, Latifi and Mazepin incident is, fully on Latifi?
I think so. I think that's absolutely on Latifi. You can't drive someone off the track on the straight. Let's have a look on board with Mazepin. So Latifi's rejoining the circuit. He comes across. Mazepin's minding his own business. Latifi keeps coming. It's on Latifi. Absolutely. Mazepin's been involved in many an incident so far, pretty much with himself the whole time. But that one is Latifi coming across from rejoining the circuit. He's come across the whole width of the track from the left, not seen a car on his right, and he's basically driven Mazepin onto the grass. Mazepin didn't take to the grass, so there's a crash.
So Ricciardo made a good start, gaining a place. Norris lost quite a few places at the start, down to 9th.
Another weather update, Max. We're expecting these conditions for the next 10 minutes.
Verstappen being told we're expecting these conditions for the next 10 minutes. Pete Ainsworth, using the hashtag BBCF1, says what Verstappen did was no worse than what Hamilton did to Rosberg a few times on the opening lap of a Grand Prix.
It happens. This is what, if you're going for the outside, Hamilton wasn't a long way ahead of Verstappen. It wasn't Verstappen launching it in. It was Hamilton ambitiously trying to hold it around the outside with barely the space to do it. And then what was probably pretty obviously going to happen was Verstappen not letting him just breeze round, go quite deep on the brakes himself. That space was always going to run out.
We have more rain in the pit lane now, more rain.
So Gasly being told more rain in the pit lane. They were told that these conditions will continue for the next 10 minutes or so. Jenny?
Yes, just having a look at Lewis Hamilton's damage. I've spoken to Mercedes. They're still trying to assess it. So it's a damage to the left end plate. It's basically missing the bottom piece, the foot of it. That was dangling around. It seems to have come away now. So he will have lost downforce on that left-hand side. It'll be frustrating.
Mick Schumacher's in the wall. Mick Schumacher has crashed out behind the safety car. In the Haas, his front wing is gone. And how much damage has he done to the... Well, it looks as though the front suspension might get away with it, but Mick Schumacher has crashed behind the safety car.
He's on full wets on the drier part of the track. So how has he done that into the pit lane exit? He wasn't in the pit lane, no. He started on the full wets, so he's just dropped it on the straight. And he's on the full wets on the less wet part of the track. Now he gets going and goes through the big puddles down at Tamburello and the Villeneuve chicane, but that'll lengthen this safety car. And all the time, pit lane entry now closed as well for anyone that fancies a tyre change. All the while, the tyre temperatures are coming down and the conditions will get harder and harder for everyone, but particularly if you're on an intermediate tyre. Gasly's still sixth on the full wet, remember.
So Mick Schumacher was weaving around trying to put temperature into his tyres, and then it snaps on him, overcorrects, and a very gentle nudge with the wall. That'll be there won't be any damage to the car other than a front wing change, but not ideal.
Well, the nose is mashed as well, so it wasn't that gentle a hit. It was just the angle of it that was quite nice to him. It didn't go in on the front right or front left. It was very square to hit the wall, but there is damage to the nose. The front wing's completely off the car now as well, but they should be able to get that going again for Mick. Still trundling around through Acqua Minerale halfway around the lap to get back to the pits, which are closed.
Diana, using the hashtag BBCF1, says Acqua Minerale suddenly living up to its name. Very true. Very true. Nicholas Latifi's car has almost been removed at the Variante Alta. Now, it was a tricky one because there was no real place to clear Latifi's car because it's on a straight where I've never seen a crash before in my life, I would say. Mick Schumacher will be hoping that the pit lane entry is open because the pit lane entry is closed because there's debris at the exit of the pit lane of Mick Schumacher's car. So is he going to be allowed to come in this time around? We'll wait and see. But both Haas cars involved in incidents on the opening lap, and Mick Schumacher is still coming around the final couple of corners now. And is he going to come into the pit lane?
No, he can't.
It's closed. Pit lane's still closed.
He can't. He's got a bit of end of his nose cone just dangling down, scraping it on the ground. He's going to be holding the leaders back if he's not getting on with it. They're still behind the safety car, but he's actually going okay. But yeah, he can't come in the pits. Remember Hamilton last year? Yeah. Huge penalty. Stop-go penalty for Hamilton for doing that from the lead of the race. Everyone's learned you can't come in, and whilst the spin was maybe a rookie moment for Schumacher, you don't want to compound that now by picking up a big penalty. He can, when the pit lane opens, come in, get a quick change of tyres and a front wing. I think we've got a Red Bull going off at Piratella.
Up at the top of the
Perez,
hill.
I think, has just run wide.
He has. Perez through the gravel.
That could
Both.
fall under the car or something?
Both.
Just watch.
No.
There's just some stuff dangling from the nose. Nothing massive, but no need to push. No need to go fast or anything.
So that's Mick Schumacher's radio. Now, Perez lost the positions and then retook them, and it looked as though Ricciardo slowed down to allow him to retake the position there.
I think he might get in trouble for that. Perez was off through the gravel when Ricciardo came through, and I think if you're off the track, I don't think you're entitled to keep that position under safety car. Big step of oversteer at Piratella, going that very slow speed behind the safety car, and he's just clean off the track when Ricciardo and Gasly come through.
Ricciardo then sort of got on the brakes, didn't he?
Ricciardo then slows. Gasly can't pass Ricciardo, but Perez passes them both, Now, we're back to Hamilton Gate of 2009 in Melbourne, where he got a big penalty and McLaren got themselves into huge trouble for repassing Jarno Trulli under safety car, but it emerged that Hamilton had actually gone off the road when he did it, and there was all sorts of lying and the rest of it that got them into further trouble. But I don't think you're entitled to retake the position if you're in the gravel.
I agree, but I think the fact that Ricciardo has stopped to let him back through is going to be the...
Okay, but let's we're still okay. We haven't lost anything, just a couple of track positions, so
We're behind the safety car here because just after you left us, Nicholas Latifi in the Williams had a big crash into the wall. He's okay, but it's still very rainy, very treacherous. Sergio Perez has just skidded off the track behind the safety car, but the safety car is going to be coming in at the end of this lap, and racing will get underway on Sports Extra.
By the way, that shows how slippery this is. Perez under safety car has just lost it on the inters. The tyre temperatures are so low, they're about to go into full racing speed again, but the grip level is going to be so difficult for everyone.
So Verstappen leading the Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton is second. Charles Leclerc is third. Sergio Perez is fourth. Daniel Ricciardo is fifth. Gasly, Stroll, Sainz, Norris, Bottas are the top 10. Then it is Russell, Raikkonen, Giovinazzi, Tsunoda and Alonso the top 15. Mazepin, Ocon, Vettel and Schumacher, the 19 drivers still in this Grand Prix. Jenny?
Yeah, we were looking at what strategies some of these drivers could take, and the question was asked before this race of one of the engineers, if a car came in around lap 5, could they make it to the end if they wanted to switch onto the dry tyre? Now, it's still too wet to be on dries, really, but they want to hold on till around lap 15, ideally, before any of the drivers think about coming in to make any use of a change. Oh, there's so much grass. I have to see that grass all over the track. That's not ideal.
Yeah, it's from where Latifi hit the wall, but yeah, we won't be dry by lap 15, so it's going to be, once you go on to dries, you can go to the end of the race, I would imagine, if we get on to dries.
Yeah, pending further safety cars. This one's coming in.
So, can Lewis Hamilton get the jump at the restart on Max Verstappen? Verstappen is about to floor it, coming out of Ravazza. I thought he was spinning it there as he was trying to get temperature into the tyres. Comes through Ravazza now, and he's still weaving around. Now Verstappen goes. He's got a pretty good restart there ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton is there or thereabouts with him as they come over the line and racing gets back underway. It's almost dry on the start-finish straight, and Hamilton has got a great run on Verstappen. Looks to the outside, coming into Tamburello. It's almost a repeat of turn 1, but Hamilton doesn't repeat his turn 1 antics and slots in behind. Got a really good run coming into Tamburello there. Everybody, Bottas was sliding very wide, but we just lost sight of him. He could be under pressure from George Russell in the Williams. Bottas slid down into 10th place in the McLaren, in the Mercedes on the opening lap. And actually, Charles Leclerc is looking very strong, and he's looking to the inside of Hamilton at Tosa. Hamilton holds on to second place. Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Perez, the top 4.
Leclerc looking extremely racy, though. On the intermediate tyres, as the bulk of the field are, just Gasly still in 6th on the wets. But Leclerc's going right with Hamilton, who had a great restart. Attacked Verstappen once again on the outside down to Tamburello. But this time not trying to chance it all the way around the outside. And Verstappen actually very good on the brakes, held the position. But Hamilton's now dropping away. Verstappen's more than 2 seconds clear. Hamilton's struggling, and Leclerc's going to get a chance.
This is a remarkable restart from Verstappen. Charles Leclerc has got a really good opportunity here at passing Hamilton. Verstappen is absolutely flying. It's not as though Hamilton is really struggling, because they're both pulling away from Perez. Sainz and Gasly are swapping positions for 6th and 7th. And I think Sainz has got ahead of Stroll and Gasly on this opening lap of the restart.
Yeah, so both Ferraris are flying. Leclerc's pressuring Hamilton a lot right now. Coming through Ravazza, this is a good chance. If he can stay close through Ravazza too, then he might have a chance into Tamburello, but Hamilton's actually exited quite well, and I don't think Leclerc will have a chance right now. But Sainz is flying at the start of this Grand Prix. Started 11th in the other Ferrari, is now still fighting with Gasly for 6th place.
And Stroll has just lost out to the two of them. It's all kicking off here. Gasly is side by side with Sainz, and Norris is going to go 3 wide and try and pass 2 of them. Coming into Tamburello, the McLaren's on the outside, Gasly is on the inside in the AlphaTauri, and he's on the extreme wet. The full wet weather tyre is Gasly, and maybe that's not the perfect tyre for these conditions, because suddenly Norris has got ahead of Sainz and Stroll. Sainz was flying, Norris is flying even more, and he's trying to get up into 6th position.
And now they're back into the wetter part of the track where Gasly can hang on for a little bit longer. Norris with a big slide coming out of the Villeneuve chicane, but Gasly's got no pace in the drier part of the lap, and he's just dropping back a long way from Daniel Ricciardo in 5th. He's bunching up a whole heap of cars behind. That wet tyre was always a cautious choice, and it looks like it's not going to be the right one unless there's further rain.
Norris just got a great drive out of Ravazza, past Stroll under acceleration, then got a tow from Gasly and Sainz in front, and oh, that's unreal commitment from Norris. Flat out through a impossible gap against the pit wall. That was remarkable.
Didn't make it stick though. Gasly was good on the brakes and kept the position, but he made it stick on the other two. Sainz now back to 8th and Stroll down to 9th. So Norris has made it back to where he qualified yesterday.
Verstappen leading the Grand Prix, sets the fastest lap of the race, and he is now 5 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton after 2 racing laps. Hamilton has been known for many, many years as the Rainmeister, and absolutely superb in wet conditions. It's been a long time since he didn't win a wet Grand Prix, but Verstappen is really doing an impressive job here today. Now Norris is getting the run on Gasly and is getting the job done on Gasly. So Lando Norris gets ahead of the Frenchman. Gasly tries to fight back. Home race for AlphaTauri, just 10 miles from their base in Faenza, but Gasly has dropped down to 7th. On those extreme wets, he needs more rain to come over the course of this Grand Prix, otherwise he's not going to get anything out of this. His teammate Yuki Tsunoda, Jenny, down in 14th place.
Yeah, having a really good drive actually. Just been watching him. He started, 19th there in fact, because Vettel didn't take the start grid. He had to start from the pit lane, and he's worked his way back up. He's got some really nice moves out there, doing really well to get himself back up to 14th. He was furious yesterday after crashing the car out in qualifying, so he's got a lot to make up out there.
Carlos Sainz is now getting ahead of Pierre Gasly. He's got the inside coming into Piratella at the top of the hill, and the Ferrari driver is now up into 7th place. So the order is Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, then Perez in 4th, the 2 McLarens of Ricciardo and Norris in 5th and 6th, Sainz, Gasly, Stroll, Bottas the rest of the top 10, then a bit of a gap back to Russell, but only 1.6 seconds, Bottas 10th in the Mercedes to Russell 11th in the Williams. They were, that's about the gap they were when they were both in the Mercedes in Bahrain last year, and another fastest lap of the Grand Prix for Max Verstappen, but Hamilton is finding a bit more pace now. He comes across the line and is only 0.3 slower on that lap.
The steering wheel is moving by itself.
Copy, Checo. We're looking into it. We can see it.
Perez has got a bit of a ghost in his car. The steering wheel is moving by itself.
Bizarre. We're on board with him now. Have a look at what's going on as he's running down towards Tamburello on the brakes down through the gears. Looked okay there, but he's not very quick right now. 8 seconds behind Charles Leclerc for 3rd position already.
Gasly struggling in the AlphaTauri. The next driver to try and launch an attack is Lance Stroll. He goes to the outside and he's going into the... Oh, I thought he was going into the gravel, but he managed to pull it off. Really good stuff from Stroll, but Gasly gets the fight back on corner exit. The FIA have confirmed no investigation necessary into Verstappen and Hamilton on lap 1. I thought Stroll was heading straight to the sand. He kept it together, didn't gain the place, but good effort.
He was on the drier part of the track, actually, on the outside, the racing line. But Gasly's just struggling so much right now.
Okay, we have a bit more rain now, a bit more rain coming now.
So that's the news that Gasly wants to hear, a bit more rain coming down. There was a brief yellow flag for a moment out there, but it doesn't look like anyone in the top 10 places made any errors. And now Bottas is coming under big pressure from George Russell. Russell has gained to within 7/10 of him. Lance Stroll is off the track. He's managed to get back on and is still in the same position he was, but he's just now in front of Valtteri Bottas and George Russell. Hamilton sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix this time, but only 0.03 quicker than Max Verstappen, and the gap is 5.2 seconds. Verstappen's opening laps were remarkable.
Yeah, Hamilton maybe coming to terms with a bit of that front wing damage. Sainz is off down at Ravazza.
Carlos Sainz rejoining the circuit, and he was running in 7th position. And
he's still there because Gasly's been so slow with everyone else. So Sainz has had a lovely buffer because he passed Gasly, has been off down in the final sector. It's cost him about 3 seconds, but he's just got such a big buffer behind because Gasly is just holding the rest of the pack back.
Valtteri Bottas on that last lap, 7 seconds slower than Lewis Hamilton. Well, the chaos hasn't gone away really yet, Jeanette. Max Verstappen is still leading the Grand Prix. He's 5 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton. Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari is third, 4 seconds back from Hamilton. Sergio Perez is fourth in the Red Bull. But Jolyon Palmer, those first 2 laps from the safety car restart from Verstappen were remarkable.
Yeah, very, very strong. More than 5 seconds clear of Hamilton, and that gap's now stabilised. So Hamilton's finding a bit more form, but critical that he managed to make that gap, hold Hamilton back in the first place, but now he's managed to just hold that gap at 5 seconds. Hamilton was under pressure from Leclerc actually in third in the Ferrari, but he's now stabilised there. He's just done the fastest lap of the race for good measure, and now he might come back to the race leader.
We're also seeing a remarkable drive from Lando Norris. He was very good yesterday in qualifying, but he could only qualify 7th. He lost a few places at the start, but he's now caught up to the back of his teammate Daniel Ricciardo for 5th place, and the 2 McLarens are fighting. So I think we're into a stage of the Grand Prix now where we're seeing what will happen between Verstappen and Hamilton, and what their pace is like when it dries up, because actually on that last lap Hamilton was half a second quicker than Verstappen, and the gap is down to 4 seconds. So fascinating Grand Prix unfolding on Sports Extra. Verstappen leading, Hamilton second. Bottas going on Gasly now. Bottas gets up into 9th place. He's managed to drop George Russell a little bit, and Gasly is sliding back and back and back on those full wet weather tyres. And the order is Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Perez, Ricciardo. It's not going to be for much longer because Sergio Perez has been given a stop-and-go penalty. A 10-second stop and
huge
go.
penalty for Perez.
Huge. That's a 30-40 second penalty for Sergio Perez. That'll be. He's out of the running at the front here.
He's going to be right at the back when he takes that. That's for overtaking 2 cars under the safety car. Then we thought it at the time. He ran wide. He made a mistake. Went through the gravel. And if you're off the track, you're no longer entitled to just retake their position. Ricciardo and Gasly came through legitimately, albeit very slowly. Perez has then taken the bait, passed them back again.
Yeah.
And it's a big pen from 4th place for Sergio Perez.
Yeah. 10-second stop and go penalty for Sergio Perez. So not just a time penalty of 10 seconds. He has to come into the pits, stop for 10 seconds and then leave, and you can't serve it as part of your pit stop. If you get a 10-second time penalty, you just get it added on to your pit stop time. But this is a huge hit for Sergio Perez and his race in 4th position. Jenny?
Yeah, for him it's really painful because this is the longest pit lane that we have. So for anyone that has to come into it just once, that's hard enough. But to come in and stop, as you say, it'll be round about 38 seconds. So he'll be sitting there just feeling the pain.
Yeah, indeed. Lap 13 of 63. Verstappen leading, Hamilton second.
He's got to take that in the next few laps as well.
Russell on the attack, trying to get past Pierre Gasly, and he manages it. The Williams is up into 10th place now. George Russell having a very solid run ahead of Raikkonen, Giovinazzi, Tsunoda, Ocon. Gasly going very wide into Tamburello. He sort of wants to, because that's where the wetter part of the track is, but he's now lost out to Kimi Raikkonen. There's only a certain amount of time, surely, before Gasly needs to pit, because he's got such little pace in those full wets. But you don't want to pit now onto the intermediates, because then you'll be at the back of the pack anyway, which is where he's going to be before too long, because Antonio Giovinazzi, the Italian, slides up the inside and gets ahead. Verstappen comes across the line now to complete his lap. Fastest lap of the Grand Prix, and they're a minute ahead of this battle. Yuki Tsunoda's just getting ahead of Gasly. Gasly's hanging in on the outside, Tsunoda up the inside, and he does get the move made, and now Ocon tries to take advantage coming down into Acqua Minerale. Mazepin's in the pits, but the gap is absolutely huge from Verstappen to Ocon, Vettel, Giovinazzi is 55 seconds.
It's 25 seconds from Verstappen to his teammate Perez in 4th.
Yeah.
It's a huge gap. The top 2 are marching away at an absolute rate of knots. Hamilton and Verstappen 1.2 seconds clear of Leclerc on that lap. That's nearly a 10-second gap now from Hamilton to Leclerc. And we know in the wet how good they both can be. And right now they're proving it toe-to-toe. Hamilton just still nibbling away at that gap. It's 4 seconds. But, they're going to be coming around to do some lapping soon.
Yeah. Verstappen leading, Hamilton second. The 2 Alpines are right together. Vettel has just got ahead of Esteban Ocon without hitting him this time around. And Ocon is another driver. Well, no, he started on the full wets. He's been in for a new set of intermediates, but he's still struggling. His teammate Fernando Alonso is on the outside coming down into Tamburello chicane, but he manages to hold the place for the time being. Meanwhile, I'd love to see what happens between Norris and Ricciardo, because they definitely swapped places briefly. Norris has dropped back to 1.2 seconds behind Ricciardo. Meanwhile, Verstappen has extended his advantage back up to 5 seconds at the front of the order. Jenny?
Considering Ocon started 9th, this is a horrible race for him and for Alpine at the moment. They're in Ocon 16th, Alonso 17th. For the wet drivers, it's only Gasly who started on the wet, who continues on the wet. Everybody else has changed onto the inters. Mazepin just came in from the wets onto the inters as well, so not dry enough to be on slicks, which has really damaged the race of anybody who started on the wets.
How many mistakes I'm going to do?
You are too quick, guy. Calm down.
So Sainz has just done another huge mistake, ploughed it into the gravel at Tosa, and still hasn't lost any positions. And he said on the radio there, God, how many mistakes am I going to do? But it doesn't matter. He can keep doing them. He's still in 7th place.
That one cost him a bit more. Cost him nearly 10 seconds. That one straight on at Tosa. He was almost heading for the wall, but managed to avoid it. Gave himself a poor critique as he came back on. And Ferrari saying, just calm down, you're actually very quick when you're going, but making mistakes. He was trying to hunt down the McLaren duo, Ricciardo 5th ahead of Norris, but that's just put pay to that. He's dropped a good 9 seconds back now.
Pierre Gasly finally pits from the full wet weather tyres. He's coming in onto a set of new intermediates.
Poor choice. Obviously right now we can say it's a poor choice, but it was the obvious case really. Unless there was another deluge, you had to survive the early laps on an intermediate and then avoid this pit stop that Gasly's just taken now. He's in for a set of inters. How much longer are they going to go before you can just put it on a set of slicks? Is Gasly starting in 5th place? Race entirely done right now, barring another intervention of some sort by a poor call on the grid. And I think that would have come from the driver himself.
Hashtag BBC F1, Ryan asks, here's Verstappen's radio.
Just keep an eye on if people start to pit for slicks. Let's check the times.
Yeah, we're looking at that, Max. You just focus on the race ahead at the moment.
Verstappen asking the team to just keep an eye if anyone stops for slicks. They're not doing so yet. Ryan says, if you can't overtake people under the safety car, what about the 2 cars that overtook Perez in order for them to have to re-overtake him? Are the rules different if you've gone off the track? Yes, basically. If the car is in the gravel, you're allowed to overtake him. But Perez isn't then allowed to come back on the track and retake those places, basically.
Yeah, the difference was Perez passed cars that were on the track. Ricciardo and Gasly passed Perez when he was off the track, so therefore you lose the right to keep your position. That's why Perez is in trouble and Ricciardo and Gasly were not.
Lap 16 of 63, Max Verstappen leading the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix at Imola. And him and Hamilton are... I mean, it would be a great duel if they were a little bit closer together, because they're both doing personal bests to within a 10th.
I have a lot more pace in me, I can't use it at the moment. I need clean air.
So that is Lando Norris asking to be allowed to go past his teammate Daniel Ricciardo. And just to illustrate that, Verstappen did the fastest lap of the Grand Prix just then as he came across the line, a 1 minute 26.597. Hamilton then did the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, a 1 minute 26.578. Absolutely remarkable trading of fastest laps between the two of them.
And they're 3 seconds quicker than Leclerc on that lap alone. They're absolutely flying, the top two. They're in a league of their own out front. And you say there's a gap, there is 5 seconds, but there's a long way to go in this one.
Yeah.
And remember, Hamilton has some damage. There's definitely a bit of damage to his front wing. He can fix that at the next stops, and that might help him to close the gap to Verstappen. He's doing well to keep it at 5 seconds, considering he's not got the optimum performance from his car.
Sound you can hear is Lando Norris in the McLaren. This is Ricciardo's radio.
Daniel, we want to swap positions. We need to see Lando's pace in clear air. We need to see Lando's pace in clear air.
So that's Ricciardo being told, get out of the way, please, mate. And let's see what Lando's got in clear air, because there's such a long way to go in this Grand Prix that Perez has got to take his stop-and-go penalty. They are quite a way away from Charles Leclerc, sort of 30 seconds or so. There is the position swap, so Norris goes through up into 5th place in the McLaren. But the variance of pace over the course of the race means they're not a million miles away from a podium. If there's a safety car or there's a whatever, a podium's on the cards here for McLaren, possibly.
And Norris does look significantly quicker. It has been all weekend in the dry, and even in the wet, he was the edge of the top 10 in the early laps, then passed a few cars quite nicely, caught the gap to Ricciardo, and was right with him, trying to pass him on track, couldn't. And now they swap.
Max, could I have an update on conditions, please?
Yeah, it's getting a little bit drier, but also still drizzling, so it's tricky.
Yeah, understood.
So So Verstappen saying it's getting drier, but it's still drizzling. Jenny.
Yeah, just on that McLaren duel between Ricciardo and Norris, they were sat down this morning, as is every Sunday of a race weekend, with Andrea Stella and Andreas Seidel, who are the two bosses, I suppose, of McLaren, to talk about the principles of racing, their rules of engagement. It's very clear the way they want them to go out and racing, but it's also clear when you're in the heat of the moment, you've got to not maybe listen to your heart and listen to your head, which is what Ricciardo's done in letting Norris go by.
And now we can see what Norris can do in that clear air. He's immediately got a 2.5 second gap back to Ricciardo, so Ricciardo couldn't stick with him.
I start to slide more over the rubber, sector 1.
I'm starting to slide more over the rubber in sector 1.
Difficult though. As the race leader, you do not want to be the first to come into the pits. You want someone else to be a chancer. Maybe Bottas down in 9th in the Mercedes, right up behind Lance Stroll. Let Bottas take a punt and go for slick tyres before they might be ready. And then if they were, you come in the next lap. You don't want to be the one that rolls the dice and takes the gamble when you've got a lead, particularly when it's 5 seconds. And it's probably the same for Hamilton as well. Hamilton, if you can get a slick, cool right, you can make up huge time because the slicks come alive. You can find 5 seconds plus by timing the slicks right. But if you get it wrong, you're going to be needing 2 pit stops, maybe spinning out, and the whole race will go. So it's too big a risk from the lead. But if you're Bottas down in 9th, you can take a punt now at some point of slicks. I don't think we're there yet, though.
A lot of you asking using the hashtag BBCF1, John, Quixotic Geek, Amit, don't you have to take a stop and go penalty within a certain amount of laps? And I think we're sitting here going, yeah, you're right. It's usually... Here's Norris's radio.
So Lando, we don't want to be the first car onto dries. We want to eke out this into tyre.
Okay, so Norris being told we don't want to be the first car onto dries. We want to keep the intermediate tyre going for a little bit longer. But yeah, I always thought it was 3 laps to come in and serve you a stop and go penalty. But you don't see stop and go penalties that much anymore, to be perfectly honest with you.
It was for Hamilton, though, in Monza.
Yeah.
It was 3 laps. So I'm surprised that we've not seen Perez come in for effectively the same pen.
Yeah, again, track is drying a bit, but not enough for the moment.
Understood, Max.
But the stewards are not investigating Red Bull anymore. I'm sure Red Bull have been on the radio to the FIA and clearing it up, or the FIA has said you need to take this within a certain amount of time, and Perez isn't doing it. And he's still going. Completes another lap in 4th.
Norris now 5.6 seconds ahead of Daniel Ricciardo, so he is absolutely flying in that McLaren, and he is closing in on Sergio Perez on that last lap. He was 2 tenths away, but Perez still has to pit.
1.5 seconds a lap quicker.
Yeah.
Norris, 1.5 seconds up on Ricciardo. Ricciardo's absolutely no slouch, but Norris is just flying this weekend. And he's 1 second quicker than Leclerc as well. That's the battle. Perez is going to be out of this one by the time he takes his penalty. It's Norris v Leclerc, maybe.
The tyres are quite hot.
So see if you can drive offline, find any damp patches, keep those temps down.
So Hamilton saying the tyres are getting a bit hot. You don't take it, and MC asks, don't you take it at a pit stop, this penalty? No, it's a separate 10-second stop and go penalty. It's not just a 10-second time penalty that gets added to your race or added to your pit stop. It's a 10-second, come into the pits, stop for 10 seconds, out you go, and then if you want to pit again, that's up to you. Lap 21 of 63. Jenny.
Been speaking to Mercedes. So Lewis Hamilton has this damage to the car, the front of the car, the front wing, left end plate at the bottom of that. That's come off in the front, in the start issues that he had. Now I've asked them, are they thinking about potentially changing that front wing over when he comes into pit? They're not ruled it out. It would come at a significant time loss. Obviously you're looking at an extra maybe 17 seconds to do a front wing change. So it is costly, but they'll have to weigh up how much damage he's got, how much faster he could be going.
Yeah, indeed. And well, it depends as well. If they're changing them behind the safety car or something, then you swap the wing.
17 seconds for a front wing change.
Maybe including tyres as well. That feels a bit. It's usually about 10, isn't it?
Yeah, it seems a lot.
Yeah. Well, so maybe it wasn't a 10-second stop and go penalty for Perez. It certainly came up as 10-second stop and go, but I'll have a look into that. Maybe it was a time penalty.
It came up on our screen as a 10-second stop and go. but maybe the screen was lying to us and it's a 10-second time penalty.
Okay, so apparently it was the wrong graphic. His penalty is a 10-second time penalty to be taken at the pit stop. So there we go. There was a clarification on that, so apologies for that, folks.
That's big as well for Perez then, so it keeps him in the race.
Yeah.
And he's going really quickly. He's just on the fastest lap of the Grand Prix in fourth, and he's only 5.8 seconds now away from Leclerc in third. So Perez is coming alive, 2 seconds quicker than Leclerc on the last lap. He will obviously lose a lot of time when he comes into the pits.
Slicks for Vettel. The Aston Martin driver going out on the mediums. Everyone's eyes now will be looking at Sergio Perez. That's the fastest lap of the race. About a second quicker than Verstappen up at the front, but all eyes now on Sebastian Vettel and his lap times as he comes out on a set of slick tyres.
Now he's just been given a 10-second stop-and-go penalty for not having the wheels fitted at the 5-minute signal.
And that is a stop-and-go penalty. Guaranteed 100%, unless they change it. Lap 22 of 63.
Now, can he make it through Sector 1 on the medium tyres? If he can, everyone's going to be pitting as soon as possible for the same thing, the medium tyres that can probably take these drivers to the end of the Grand Prix. Vettel's sort of sideways coming out of Villeneuve chicane, but he's made it through the bulk of the wet patch. Gets passed by Gasly for position.
Yeah, indeed. Gasly having pitted onto a set of intermediates, though. The sound you can hear is Valtteri Bottas in 9th place, who isn't making much progress through the field. He's up behind Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. Now, why earlier on did we hear, was it Hamilton being told we don't want to be the first car onto the dry tyres? We want to eke it out. Oh, no, it was Norris, wasn't it? It was Norris. Why wouldn't they want to be the first car onto...
Maybe they're thinking about tyre life at the end of the Grand Prix, but that would be a very strange play to not switch to slicks, because if you can get slicks fired up, they will be so much quicker than a wet. There's no point eking out another 1 or 2 laps tyre life, because you'll be losing 5 to 10 seconds per lap in terms of lap time. So as soon as Vettel's got his tyres working, you've got to come in. What are his sector times looking like? He's okay through the middle sector. No, he's not. 4 seconds off in the middle sector. Maybe a lap or 2 early for Vettel, but he's on a personal best third sector. What can he do in the first? That's where it's the wettest. If he can get through the first sector okay, everyone will be in the pits, but no one's jumped at the first time of asking.
Well, and the other tricky thing now is if it is a full stop-and-go penalty for Vettel, he'll have to come into the pits on the next lap or the lap after that, so we won't actually get a good read on it. So we'll see what happens there. Valtteri Bottas up behind Lance Stroll still as they come out across the line. Verstappen leading, still 5.3 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton in second place. 15 seconds back to Charles Leclerc's Ferrari in third. Perez only 6 seconds back from Leclerc, so Perez is finding a bit of pace now. Norris still 7/10 a lap quicker than his teammate Daniel Ricciardo. The 2 McLarens in 5th and 6th. Sainz, Stroll, Bottas, Russell, the rest of the top 10. Russell 2 seconds clear of Raikkonen and Giovinazzi, Tsunoda, Ocon, Alonso, Gasly, Vettel, Schumacher and Mazepin, the 19 drivers. Appalling pace for the, well, not appalling, but the Alpines really struggling out there.
Still going, 14th and 15th, but both are a lap down already on lap 24 of 63. They're already 1 lap down. I'll tell you what, Bottas is not far off being a lap down as well. In 9th position, the leaders have been marching off at such a pace. They're actually just now tailing off to be the same pace as some of the midfielders. So that will give Bottas a bit more of a reprieve. But he had about 15 seconds before Verstappen would be coming around to put a lap on him.
Lap 24 of 63. Just having a look at Charles Leclerc coming through the Variante Alta, but I think it's just a pretty shot of Charles Leclerc.
He's up this pace, Leclerc, since Perez started closing in, and he's responded. Fastest man on track from the, well, out of anyone. 2 seconds clear of Verstappen last time. Now Vettel is serving his stop-and-go penalty, which will be a frustration for him. 23 laps to work out that the wheels weren't fitted at the 5-minute mark. Seems like quite a long time, but anyway, away he goes. And Vettel rejoins the track. How was he doing pace-wise? 3 seconds off in the first sector. You know what? That's close. For the wettest sector on the track, I think we're really close now to the change point. I think the next person that does it anytime soon is going to get it bang on. The right time to pit for slicks.
Who is going to do it?
Got to be Bottas.
Yeah.
Has to be Bottas. At the moment, he's holed up behind Lance Stroll in 9th place. He's in a Mercedes. His teammate's fighting for the win here. but Bottas is not able to pass the Canadian, and he's out of this one. He's got 20 seconds to catch Carlos Sainz for 7th. He needs some intervention, and he can make that intervention himself by getting this cool right.
The gap at the front is down to 3 seconds. It was up to 5 a few laps ago, but Hamilton is looking really quick. Is it Verstappen? It's now down to 2.5 seconds, in fact, by the time I've said that. Jenny?
Yeah, Hamilton just on the radio said the grip is coming back. Mick Schumacher's been into pits. He's gone with the soft tyres as well, just as a note.
Okay, so we'll keep an eye out on Schumacher's times too. I did a little because Verstappen had some nasty traffic there, which might be part of the reason he lost a lot of time, because Hamilton's having to go offline to try and get past Lance Stroll.
It's Sebastian Vettel, isn't it?
Yeah,
and then
right.
Vettel's on the slicks and he doesn't want to go offline. So Vettel's making life hard for the race leaders, and that gap now immediately goes back up. Vettel not helping Hamilton out, but he'd already helped him out before.
How are conditions, Max?
Yeah, trying, but not enough.
Yeah, Vettel is slithering around on his dry weather tyres, and 3.4 seconds now, the gap between Verstappen and Hamilton, so it goes up again. Gasly gets out of the way a little better for Hamilton this time around, but it's still Verstappen leading the Grand Prix. Hamilton second, Leclerc third, fourth is Sergio Perez, fifth is Lando Norris, sixth is Daniel Ricciardo, and at the moment then, Norris was 2 seconds quicker than Perez on that last lap. Gap down to 13.7 seconds. So Norris is getting within that 10-second window to get ahead of the Red Bull.
Really slow lap from Perez. I don't know what happened. Maybe some lapping needing doing, or a big mistake. But he was a long way adrift of the rest of the guys in the top 10. Leclerc's going well, within 13 seconds of Hamilton.
So still no cars going faster on dry.
Still no cars going faster on the dry is the message to Bottas. Now he has he is still up behind Stroll. Sainz has now caught Daniel Ricciardo.
Got to pit for dries. Vettel's just done a sensible first sector. He's only 8/10 slower than Raikkonen on the inters. Now is the time to pit for dries. Bottas is... You don't wait for someone else to do it. If you're down in 9th in a Mercedes, be the one to go for the dries.
Here comes Sainz to the outside of Daniel Ricciardo coming into Tamburello, and he breezes past on the outside. So Sainz up into 6th place, Ricciardo drops to 7th. Norris is 12 seconds up the road from that fight now. He's absolutely flying, Lando Norris. Here's Hamilton's radio.
Still wet in some places.
Roger.
Still waiting in some places, says Hamilton, presumably wet to dry.
Still wet in some places. Verstappen carries on for another lap. Hamilton carries on for another lap. This tyre crossover could come at a perfect point for Verstappen, because he is being reeled in quickly now. The gap is down to 2 seconds. We've got a race on our hands at the front, and we're right into a tricky pit stop window.
Can you undercut if you're Mercedes here?
They can. They've got to pit Bottas, even as just a measure to quickly get a bit of info for Hamilton out front. Bottas at the moment is on a hiding to 2 points. There we go, pitter. It's Tsunoda.
So Tsunoda from 15th place comes into the pits. We'll see how much ground he can gain. The field is quite spread out, though. There's that 20-second gap between Ricciardo and Stroll in 7th and 8th positions. Verstappen is now going past Antonio Giovinazzi up the hill. The gap is just 1.3 seconds between Verstappen and Hamilton.
Vettel's done a personal best in the first sector. I don't know why no one else is pitting. It's got to be the crossover. Everyone's being super cautious. You can understand the top 2. I can't understand the drivers further down. Tsunoda's gone for it. Vettel is now on the slicks, quicker than he was ever on the inters, and everyone else on the inters is starting to get slower than they have been on the inters.
Red Bull meandering out into the pit lane. Is this the time they're going to bring Max Verstappen in from the lead of the Grand Prix?
Max, thoughts on conditions?
Yeah, well, if the slicks are not better, then what do you want me to do? It's getting very dry, that's for sure, but one line.
Has to pit.
And he does. Max Verstappen comes into the pits. Now Hamilton needs to do a mega lap in order to try and get a gain and advantage while Verstappen is slippering around on his dry weather tyres.
Fastest third sector for anyone for Sebastian Vettel on that lap, and he is pretty much the quickest man on track on slicks. That is the time, I think, for Verstappen to pit. Maybe Hamilton might have pitted if Verstappen didn't.
He's in.
Hey, let's go for it, Lewis. Let's go for it. You've got 1 lap.
So Hamilton being told he's going to try and do the sort of overcut, if you will. Now Russell is pitted. He's the first of the kind of top 10 to pit. So that could be an interesting move for Williams. How quickly can Verstappen get up to temperature and get up to speed on these tyres? How brave can he be on the outlap? not knowing the conditions out there, because Hamilton will be in next time around.
So remember, Hamilton will have to tippy-toe out on slicks the next time, but will he have the lead when he's doing it? That's the thing. Hamilton's done the fastest first sector of the Grand Prix so far.
Wow.
He may have track position, but emerge on a slick tyre for the first time.
So Hamilton is absolutely flying. He and Sebastian Vettel are the fastest drivers out on circuit. Hamilton is doing what he did in Turkey at the end of last year. He's got those tyres that are sort of almost slick now, probably, because of how dry the track is, and he is absolutely wringing the neck of that Mercedes. He's coming down now out of the second Ravazza and surely dives into the pit lane. This time around he does. Hamilton into the pits. He's 28.5 seconds ahead of Verstappen. It's going to be close.
Verstappen was 2 tenths quicker than Hamilton through the middle sector, but what did he lose in the first? Mercedes in. Red Bull pit stop was magic and Mercedes isn't.
Slow on the right front for Mercedes. It's 4 seconds. It's 2 seconds slower than the Red Bull pit stop. Verstappen is coming out of the second Ravazza now and charging down over the start-finish straight. It's going to be close, and I think it's going to be Verstappen who's going to retake and hold on to the lead of the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. Comes through the kink now. Hamilton floors the throttle, gets a big slide on, but Verstappen still holds the lead of the race. Max Verstappen out in first place. Hamilton in second, 1.2.5 seconds back from Verstappen. So it hasn't worked out, and that 2-second delay was a huge issue. Perez pits. He emerges on a medium tyre, but Hamilton comes out 2.5 seconds behind and was 2 seconds longer in the pit stop.
Front right didn't come off very cleanly. Would have been so tight had he had a good pit stop. I think Verstappen would still have had it just, but it would have been a very sweaty one for him. Mercedes there, I think they could have been a lot more aggressive in that pit window. I think Verstappen pitted on the perfect moment. That gap now is up to nearly 6 seconds that he's got back to Hamilton. He pitted at the perfect moment. That man that's just screeched out of the pit, Valtteri Bottas, is at a 2.2 second pit stop. How Hamilton could have done with that. But what were they doing not calling Bottas in earlier? What were they doing?
Well, but was that a Bottas choice?
Might have been.
Lap 29 of 63. Fastest lap of the Grand Prix for Max Verstappen as he came across the line that time. He's got the gap up to 5.5 seconds. Verstappen, huge lap. Lap 30 of 63, Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton have just both pitted for dry tyres. Verstappen did it a lap earlier and as a result has managed to hold the lead of the race. He's 5 seconds up the road from Hamilton, but Hamilton is now going to be on a charge on dry tyres as he tries to hunt down his title rival. Verstappen leads, Hamilton second. Full commentary on Sports Extra. Hamilton does the fastest first sector of anyone. He's a second quicker than Verstappen in sector 1, Hamilton.
That's impressive. That's impressive on his first flying lap through Sector 1. But Verstappen's in all manner of traffic.
And he can't go offline to pass them. And there's a slow Aston Martin in there.
It's Stroll fighting with Bottas. That's what it is. Bottas is come out of the pits finally, just ahead of Lance Stroll. They're both struggling on slicks, but Hamilton's also got to pass this whole line of cars.
Mick Schumacher was one of the drivers getting out of the way, down in 18th position. He and Vettel are in a fight down there as well, and Bottas is really going slowly, really tiptoeing, intentionally or not. We'll wait and see. Verstappen should be able to breeze past him down the start-finish straight. Doesn't have DRS, of course, at this point in time, but Bottas does fairly kindly get out of the way. But now Bottas is going to get done by Stroll. There is DRS. My apologies. DRS is now activated, and suddenly Stroll is going to go trying to pass Max Verstappen coming down into Tamburello. Doesn't do it, but Stroll is now ahead of Bottas, 8th and 9th for those two, and George Russell is now right behind in the Williams, is right behind Valtteri Bottas in the Mercedes.
Because he pitted earlier.
Yeah.
Because he pitted earlier, and Bottas is not comfortable on the slicks, but he's on them too late. Everyone else has been on them and had them fired up, and they're more comfortable in the conditions, and now Bottas is about to be done by his teammate.
Into the gravel goes Hamilton! Lewis Hamilton into the gravel at Tosa, and he crunches his front wing against the barrier. Hamilton crunches his front wing against the wall. He selects reverse and he'll try and get out of the gravel trap, but Hamilton's battle for the win is done. Can he get out of the wall? He hasn't done a huge amount of damage except to the front wing. He'll have to pit again, and Hamilton has lost second place to Leclerc. Big error for Lewis Hamilton. He slid into the gravel trap as he was trying to close in on Max Verstappen, and he is currently parked up against the wall, and he's struggling to find reverse gear, and Hamilton's chances of winning the Grand Prix are over. Verstappen leads, Leclerc second. Big mistake here from Lewis Hamilton, Mark. Hamilton's managed to find reverse, and he's now reversing through the gravel trap and almost reversing straight back out onto the race circuit at Tosa, and Hamilton has now dropped down to 6th position. Is he going to score any points from the Grand Prix today?
And he's got to pit again because he's got damage. He's just been passed there by Ricciardo. Huge damage for Hamilton. The front wing scraping against the ground. I think that the wheels are
and off. Also, it's Bottas. Bottas and Russell are off. Bottas and Russell off at Tamburello. The two have collided, the Williams and the Mercedes driver. Russell is absolutely furious. And Bottas has lost both of his front wheels. Safety car deployed. That'll help Hamilton a little bit. But they've had a huge crash coming down into Tamburello.
They crashed on the straight. If they crashed on the straight on the way up to Tamburello, that's going to be a safety car. Definitely.
It's already deployed. Russell is climbing out of his car. He's okay. He's going to jog over to see that Valtteri Bottas is doing all right. I can see Bottas taking his steering wheel off and now removing his hands device, so he's okay as well. Russell is marching over to the Mercedes of Valtteri Bottas that's been in an absolutely monumental crash here. There's another spinner, and it's Fernando Alonso. Fernando Alonso in the Alpine has spun. Russell is giving Bottas a piece of his mind, gives Bottas a slap on the head, but there's been a big crash between these two drivers. The order: Verstappen, Leclerc, Norris now third, Perez fourth, Sainz fifth, Ricciardo, Hamilton, Stroll, Raikkonen, Tsunoda the top 10. Decent timing, that safety car for Hamilton. He's come into the pits in 7th position. He's getting his new front wing. He emerges now, and he might still be in the point scoring positions when he comes back out onto the track. I think he is, you know. I think he's
helped by the fact that 2 of the top 10 have had their own crash as well. So the gap was huge already.
So what is that? So Bottas has been hit by Russell from behind. I'm presuming he's moved over and hit him on the straight. Here's the onboard with Russell.
It's on the main straight up to Tamburello. Russell's on the outside.
So Russell, I think, kind of got on the grass by himself, didn't he?
I think Russell's actually lost that by himself and then pitched himself into Bottas. Big high-speed impact for the two of them. Russell was trying to pass Bottas. Bottas was on the left, on the inside, coming down to Tamburello. Russell is absolutely furious with Bottas, and he went down to remonstrate with the Finn in the Mercedes. It looked, though, like he had space, and he lost it on his own.
What the
Are you okay, Valtteri?
It was a big one.
Oh, good.
It was a big one for Bottas.
What the was he doing? Honestly, is he a for what?
Well, that's Russell furious with Bottas.
Well, I think it looked like Russell had space, and he maybe got him. He got on the white line on the outside. It was tight. It was tight for him, but he got on the white line and he lost it on his own, and that pitched him left into Bottas, who's crouching down. He's clearly winded from a big impact with the wall. Great to see them both out, because that is a high-speed part of the track. Used to be a chicane that broke up that straight down from Rivazza up to Tamburello. Now it's flat out all the way. Top speeds approaching 200 mile an hour, and that is where they crashed.
Well, it's all going wrong for Mercedes here today, isn't it? Max Verstappen still leading the Grand Prix for Red Bull. We'll give you the full order in a moment. Just getting a replay of what happened to Lewis Hamilton, and a red flag. Certainly is. It's a long afternoon here, Mark, because the red flag has come out. They've stopped the race after a crash between Valtteri Bottas and George Russell. Big accident between the two drivers. They're both okay. Bottas seemed winded. They were battling over 9th place, but they are both out of the Grand Prix. Hamilton has had to pit to repair that damage he picked up last time, and he's come out in 7th position, but red flag at the moment. Race suspended. So, I wonder Well, not I wonder why there's a red flag. It was a big crash, but I wonder why they're not just dealing with it behind the safety car.
Are there barrier repairs needed, possibly, for that level of impact? There's debris strewn across the circuit, and Bottas and Russell both hit the wall.
You need to clear up the track is probably the issue.
There's no real way around it right now. So the safety car is parked in the pit lane. All the rest of the cars come in behind it now. And we have a full race suspension. We've still got a long way to go. We're about half distance, Jack.
Well,
uncharacteristic for Hamilton. Lapping Russell on the inside at Tosa, and he was just on the wet part, on slicks. He hadn't been on the slicks very long, just one flying lap and an out lap, and he was just desperate to pass those back markers as quickly as possible. Verstappen had lost a lot of time, being a bit cautious but staying on the racing line the lap before. Hamilton went to the inside at Tosa, but just got on the wet patch on the dry tyres and slithered off down to the wall, similar to Fernando Alonso on the way around to the grid earlier on. Just oversteered, caught it, but then was pointing down forwards into the wall. He's had a reprieve here.
It reminded me a bit of Vettel in Germany. Obviously Vettel did it by himself, but it was, if you've seen that crash, it was that sort of speed and nudge with the barrier.
Precisely. Low speed into the barrier. He took a long time to get going. That was the real damage. He's down in 9th, Hamilton. So Stroll and Raikkonen just about came through ahead of Hamilton as well. So he's down to 9th, but he's going to have a 50% race now to see what he can salvage in a Mercedes, and he's got pace. He's got pace that could have maybe won the Grand Prix without that mistake.
So we're getting a replay again of Russell and Bottas coming down, and they've had their collision very early, as we say, and then both of their second hits are pretty big too. I think Russell gets on the grass. I think Bottas covers the inside, Russell goes to the outside, and listen, I think the rear gets on at least the white line.
And I think there's not a lot of space there, but there is space for a Formula One car on the outside of Bottas.
I think Bottas is not to blame at all there, for me personally.
No, I think Russell has got wide. He's got on the white line or the grass on slicks. It's very wet, and he's just, you could hear it, the wheel spin there as he's done it, in 8th gear at extremely high speed, but it's just pitched him out of control, 90 degrees left, where Bottas is, and they're both out of the race, and both with huge impacts there. I do think that's Russell. I think there was a space. The conditions are obviously very hard. Everyone wants a bit of dry line. I think there was enough space for a Formula One car to be on the outside of Bottas. I don't think he really put him off the track as such. But it was tight, and I think George was too far off onto the right.
And because the track is turning left there at that point as well, so your trajectory is to the grass, and you've got to kind of steer out of that. And I guess he's going to be unsighted as he comes around and all of those. I don't think I'm sitting here thinking Russell should be given a pen for that.
It's tight. It's very high speed. Yeah, it's a sort of racing incident. It's very high speed. To negotiate a very small gap is tough, but I don't think Bottas was any wider than Verstappen was at the start of the Grand Prix. But Hamilton managed to find that space with his Mercedes at the start, and Russell, there was probably more space for him to take around the outside of Bottas than Hamilton had on the outside of Verstappen at the start of the Grand Prix. But obviously coming in at 200 mile an hour and having very fine margins to the left, a Mercedes, to the right, a white line, and the grass is very slippery. He was a bit cautious with the Mercedes on the left, so he went to the right and caught the white line or the grass, and that's what pitched him into that spin and took he and Bottas out of the Grand Prix.
So the order is thus: Max Verstappen leads, Charles Leclerc second for Ferrari, third is Lando Norris in the McLaren. And that decision of swapping Norris and Ricciardo, if they'd have left Norris behind Ricciardo, McLaren would be running 6th and 7th at the present time. Norris, meanwhile, is in the podium positions in 3rd place. Perez 4th, Sainz 5th, Ricciardo 6th, 7th for Stroll, 8th for Kimi Raikkonen, 9th for Hamilton. Yuki Tsunoda's got up into the top 10 now. Giovinazzi's 11th, Alonso, Ocon at 12th and 13th for Alpine, Gasly 14th, Vettel 15th, Schumacher and Mazepin still 16th and 17th, Bottas, Russell and Latifi out of the Grand Prix.
Good work for McLaren, great work for Norris to be up in 3rd place. We're going to have a standing start when we get going again. The new protocol that's been in place now for a couple of years of a standing start after a red flag, and that's going to give everyone a chance now to try and make some positions in what will be chilly and still some damp patches offline. everyone now on slicks to the end of the race, 30 laps. Norris in third. Brilliant call from McLaren to let him pass Ricciardo. Good from Ricciardo to do it without, well, we didn't hear any quibbles back on the radio. He's been outclassed this weekend by Norris. And Lando managed to do enough good laps in a row to just about jump Sergio Perez when Perez took his penalty. Also had a steering wheel change when he did so. But he wouldn't have lost a lot of time with that one on top of the 10-second penalty. Red Bull at the front, Ferrari second, McLaren third.
Yeah.
Have to say, just looking at the Mercedes crash again and the situations that happened just before it and Russell's reaction to it. Russell is fairly unflappable, I think. George Russell is quite a calm guy. Last time out in Imola, he crashed beside a safety car and acted really badly to it, really upset. This time he's got very upset once again. And just looking at what happened before that, Russell was the car Hamilton had to try and get round to overtake, and it was then that Hamilton came offline, slipped, and then went into the barrier and, you know, ended up with a broken front wing, and it took him ages to get back. So a really costly day for Mercedes, obviously, and for George Russell, but the dynamic between those three drivers as well, I just wonder how much will that be altered by these?
It's tense, isn't it? It's tense between Russell and Bottas. Teammates last year at the Sakhir Grand Prix. Russell really upstaged Valtteri Bottas there. Should have won the Grand Prix for Mercedes on his debut, and now that would have got under Bottas' skin. They both know that they're probably fighting for a Mercedes seat next year and not happy with each other. But it all happens in a flash when you're going that quick at the end of a straight. And you're talking about margins of an inch to the right, inch to the left. It's so hard to gauge, and it happens so quickly. It would have felt for Russell, because the speed is so high, the wall's so close on the right-hand side, I'm sure it would have felt like he had nowhere to go. But the track's not that wide. And Bottas, I don't think, was pushing too far to the right-hand side. We get another replay of it now, but the crash happens too quickly for the cameraman to turn around. He's not expecting it to come at that part on the track. So we haven't seen the outside shot, only George Russell's on board, which I think shows us that there was space to the left-hand side. Another replay on board with George. Bottas holds the left. He does amble towards the right when he sees that Russell's not going for the inside. It's tight. It's tight.
But I don't think I think that's just the way that, for me, I think that's just the way the track's going, because we're on board now with Bottas. Bottas moves to the left, quite on board with Bottas. To me, he moves to the left fairly decisively, and Russell, we're just getting a view from behind now, on board with Kimi Räikkönen, and Bottas goes to the left. There's plenty of room there for Russell, I think.
Yeah, I do think that one's on Russell.
I mean, maybe he's got sort of spooked a bit by Bottas, you know, the track going that way and stuff, but I don't think it's Bottas' fault at all.
I haven't seen a Formula 1 driver that angry with another Formula 1 driver, probably since Verstappen and Ocon in Brazil a couple of years ago. There's a bit of space. Bottas actually sees that he's moving to the right and tries to give Russell a bit more space when he sees what's happening. But Russell's lost it by then. I think there's space for him, and I think that one's on George. Both out of the Grand Prix, though.
Yeah.
And it was a horrible race for Bottas, that. It was on the back foot from a Williams, genuinely, in terms of pace. His teammate was fighting for the race win. Bottas started 8th. Mercedes inexplicably delayed pitting him for the slicks until everyone else had pitted for the slicks, when he was the man that surely had to take a bit of a gamble.
But is it inexplicable? Because when the race started, off air, before the start of the race, I felt this isn't a Bottas day. When you look at today, you don't go, this is a Bottas day. He was 7 seconds slower than Hamilton in the early stages. But to me, Bottas isn't a driver that you stick on the slicks and he's going to be great, and that's going to give you a good benchmark. You stick Bottas on the slicks, isn't he going to be sort of slipping around quite a lot? And it's not the same as sticking Verstappen on the slicks, or even a Ricciardo on the slicks, or
Vettel on the slicks. Mick Schumacher was on the slicks, by the way, 1 lap after Vettel. You know, Formula 1 drivers have got to be capable of putting on slicks in a crossover period. They've got to be capable of being an early one to go on slicks and finding a bit of grip when the grip is possible to be found. He's a Formula 1 driver. He's in the best team maybe in the history of the sport. They've got to think that he's capable of doing that. But they just waited and waited and waited. He actually had just passed Lance Stroll on track when he pitted, but because he then came out on slicks when everyone else had them up to temperature, he got passed by Stroll. He was looking horribly slow in front of both Verstappen and then Hamilton, who was about to lap him until he slithered off at Tosa. And then Russell had an attack on the next lap. He had no pace, but he was also the newest onto the slicks at the time as well.
Hamilton, during the red flag, was crouched down on his knees in that pose that you remember so clearly from the Malaysian Grand Prix of 2016. Well, I do. Jolyon you probably saw him in that pose as you came past, saying thank you very much.
No, I saw the smoke from his big end at the time that had gone. Gave me a nice point for 10th position, my first point of Formula One.
So, Verstappen then. So the reason for the red flag, I think it's fair enough, because it's all the debris on the track. I think that was the issue. Clearing the cars has already happened. That's not too bad. But if you have cars coming through, you're never going to be able to sort of clear it in time, because there's going to be cars coming through every 2 minutes. So I think a sensible decision from race direction. And now we just wait for the race to get back underway. They're just sweeping up the track at the moment, I imagine. Maybe some barrier damage, as you alluded to earlier on, Jolyon. We haven't had a 10-minute warning for the restart yet, which we will get, and the order is Verstappen. So Leclerc's doing a good job in this race for Ferrari. We haven't really spoken about him a huge amount, because he's just been sitting in third the whole time. He's now in second place.
He wasn't a million miles away from the top two by the time that they were just slowing before the pit stop, struggling with some grained intermediates. I think Leclerc was doing very well, kept himself ahead of a charging Perez. Verstappen here has an open goal. As a championship contender, he's got Bottas out of the Grand Prix, Hamilton down in 9th, Perez, his teammate, even is 4th. He's got a Ferrari that he must be quicker than, and then Lando Norris, who I say he must be quicker than, but Norris has been flying. But they're second and third. Verstappen leads the race for what will be 29 laps of a shortened Grand Prix, effectively, right now. He must win from this position as a championship contender, but on this sort of day you just don't know what's going to happen. You wait for the next twist to come, but what an opportunity for Leclerc and Norris. Can Hamilton come back towards the top 3 here from 9th? They can fix his car. Didn't look like there was a huge amount of damage. It wasn't a huge hit with the wall anyway for Hamilton at Tosa. Where can Hamilton recover to? Can he spoil either Leclerc or Norris's party here for a podium?
Just thinking, Hamilton wasn't going too badly before, the incident that led to him, and he had that damage from the lap 1 start incident with Verstappen, which was a damaged rear end plate on the front. They've changed that front wing now, so all damage that he potentially had, and at least damage to the front wing, has gone away. So there might be a little bit of floor damage, bits and bobs like that, but I suppose a double front wing replacement in essence for just the one. So quite handy for Hamilton in a way. He's got a lot of work to do, but 2 for the price of 1.
Yeah, no, and having pitting when the safety car came out and was deployed as well worked out pretty well for Hamilton too. So in the grand scheme of things, it could have been a lot worse, obviously. Could have been a lot better as well, not sliding into the wall up at Tosa. Lando Norris is going to be running 3rd then. 4th, Sergio Perez for the Red Bull team. Hamilton is just having a conversation with James Allison as they walk back down towards the...
That's James Vowles.
Oh, sorry, it is James Vowles, isn't it?
Strategist,
these
and
masks.
That's the person. I know, it's really hard to tell. I could tell from the back there wasn't enough grey. Sorry, no disrespect.
Brutal.
Yeah, well, call it as it is. That's me. So he's having a chat with his strategist. They're actually walking arm in arm down the pit lane. The bond that this team has, that Mercedes has, normally can get them out of any situation. Well, it can't get them out of too much now. Lewis Hamilton down in 9th when the restart happens. Bottas out. Russell, their 3rd and replacement driver, out as well in the Williams. But Hamilton was, you said actually, didn't you? Hamilton down on his haunches, just looking as if the world had dropped away from him. But actually, Vowles just looks like he's picked him back up again, almost literally and emotionally.
And we're in a tough place here for Mercedes as far as the Constructors' Championship is concerned. Okay, it's only round 2, but Red Bull running 1st and 4th, one Mercedes running in 9th position. And Andrew Benson, let's bring you in, BBC's chief F1 writer.
Hi, Jack.
How are you doing with this Grand Prix? Having fun?
It's amazing, isn't it? It's just like, I mean, where do you start talking about it? You know, I mean, 1 minute it looks like Verstappen and Hamilton are in a complete league of their own, you know, underlining their status as the best drivers in the world. Then Hamilton drops it, lapping somebody. Then Russell and Bottas, I mean, goodness me. Leclerc's done a fantastic job so far as well in that Ferrari. Obviously a weekend to forget Fernando Alonso in the Alpine. I mean, and we've still got, 29 laps to go. It's amazing. It's almost like a rehearsal for the sprint races they're going to try later on for qualifying.
Yeah, exactly. And George Russell doing a good job today in sort of selling himself to Toto Wolff, isn't he?
Well, he was doing. I mean, the thing was, it was the worst possible race for Valtteri Bottas, wasn't it? It's exactly the sort of situation where he always seems to struggle. He's in the middle of the pack. He can never make up places in the same way that people like Hamilton and Verstappen can. And then you've got changing conditions. He struggles with tyre temperature quite often in a way that Hamilton doesn't. So just absolute nightmarish for him. And then he's got a Williams being driven by the guy who he's in contention for a seat with for next year, closing on him. I mean, how bad would that feel for him? And then they they don't come together, but they have an incident as a result of them racing side by side. Russell trying to overtake in a Williams on a Mercedes, but then it all goes a bit wrong for them both. I mean, obviously it'd be interesting to see what they both think about that incident, having seen the replays, because I mean, just watching the reaction on social media, I'm seeing a mixed response from various people. A lot of people are agreeing with your and Jolene's assessment that there was probably just about enough space for Russell on the outside, and just another replay they're just showing now as I talk, he does seem to get his right hand wheels on the edge of the track, possibly touching the grass a little bit. But, you know, there wasn't a lot of space there, so, you know, whose fault was it? Should Bottas have given him a bit more room?
But you don't need to leave a lot of space. You need to leave a car's width. There was a car's width.
I agree. I'm not taking sides. I'm just saying there will be debate about it, and other people have said, Bottas shouldn't have moved over. Although I'm not even sure he did move over, because the track sort of moves direction there, doesn't it? So tough one to call. But on balance, I would say I'm with you, Jolene. But other people are not agreeing with that. So it'd be interesting to see what the stewards make of it.
We got some vintage argument though, because Russell is leaning in, having a go at Bottas. Bottas just gives him the finger right in his face, and Russell then gives a little slap on the helmet of Bottas as he walks away. It's not quite Eliseo Salazar, Nelson Piquet, but there's a nice little argument as well.
It's as close as you can get in 2021, I think, to that. Russell, absolutely furious. I don't know if he would have done himself any favours necessarily by storming over to Bottas in that way. I think it's a racing incident.
Have you ever stormed over to another driver in the cockpit, you know?
One driver, I was after the race, I gave a real piece of my mind to.
Really?
In Formula 1, in GP2.
But he was a Formula 1 driver at one point?
Fortunately not.
Oh, okay.
Sergio Canamassas.
Oh, I thought it was going to be Nasser.
No, I don't think I don't think I ever had a real go with Nasser.
What did you have a go at Canamassas about?
Lapping him, and he binned me at Silverstone. Yeah, appalling. But yeah, look, emotions run high in these moments, and you can sort of understand it. And from George's point of view, the speed is so high. It is really tight, but you have to leave a car's width is the regulation. Bottas doesn't have to make it easy for Russell to pass him. His job is to make it hard for Russell to pass him within the rules, and I don't think he broke the rules to do that. He left the space. It's tricky for Russell. The conditions are hard. Everything else, the speed is high, the gap is small, but I believe the gap was there, and George went a little bit too cautiously to Bottas, left too much margin to the Mercedes on the left. That put him on the grass on the right, and effectively caused the collision. It's a racing incident. It's an accident. He didn't steer into Bottas. He lost control, and Bottas was the collateral damage there. But
Andrew Benson has just stolen what I said word for word and turned it into a tweet of his own. Not impressed with that, Andrew. That is absolute. What's it called? Fraudulent. What's it called? Plagiarism. Plagiarism.
Jack, I'm sorry, Jack, but I'm getting you back for a couple of things. You got the wrong Ferrari spinning on the first lap, and I tweeted that as a result of you saying that. So that one's on you, buddy.
Okay, fine. We have got 7 minutes to go before the race restarts, Jenny.
Yes, we have, and certain cars will be allowed to unlap themselves. So question for Jolyon after I've read out the list. It's everyone from Stroll backwards. So Stroll, Raikkonen, Hamilton, Tsunoda, Giovinazzi, Alonso, Ocon, Gasly, Vettel, Schumacher and Mazepin will all be able to unlap themselves. Now, we saw this, I'm sure it was last time out when we were in Italy. Was it Mugello?
Yeah.
Cars were able to unlap themselves, and those cars had warmer tyres, they were hotter, they did a better restart, and we saw a real change around the field because of it. So does that give some sort of, I don't know, little advantage to Hamilton, who's going to be starting in P9?
Temperature's still cool, 11 degrees, so an extra lap around. Yeah, there will be a marginal gain there. Everyone will get a lap around to the grid anyway, but maybe an extra marginal gain for everyone that needs to unlap themselves. The guys that he's got to overtake initially will also get a lap round to the grid, though. It's Stroll. Only the top 6 are on the lead lap at this point. Verstappen, Leclerc, Norris, Perez, Sainz and Ricciardo. 2 Red Bulls, 2 Ferraris, 2 McLarens. Everyone else has either crashed or been lapped.
I think the issue in Mugello, it was a safety car restart as well, was it not? And so they were all up to...
I think it was standing.
Was it standing? Fine then.
It was the restart after Stroll's fiery crash, which was, I think, caused a red flag, and it was another standing start.
Okay, fine.
So I think it was the same situation.
Nice amusing tweet here using the hashtag BBCF1 from Bryn, who says, "I bless the rains down in Imola." I like it. Sing it, Jenny.
No. Much like the person who said, "Oh, we're going to Miami. Great. Jenny Gow in the pit lane with a bikini." Again, no. Nobody needs that in their life.
Yeah, you shouldn't have tweeted that, Jolyon. Inappropriate.
Difficult. Very difficult. Anyway, lots of work going on to the cars. Now, there is prescribed work that's allowed to be done. If you've picked up damage, you're allowed to change that and replace parts. You're allowed to have a look at the tyres. And the front wing of Sergio Perez's car, they were just replacing a couple of elements of that as well. So there is work that's allowed to be done. But this will be fascinating to see how this restart goes, because there are cars out of place. Perez will get another bite at the cherry. He'll be in 4th place as well. I mean, this is looking like a really could be, I don't want to commentators curse it, but Red Bull, happy day for them at the moment. So they just need to take a deep breath, regroup, and see what they can make of a day when Mercedes have had a bad one.
Perez got to fight back for a podium here. That's got to be his job, to pass Norris or Leclerc or both, and make sure it's 2 Red Bulls on the podium. We're basically getting a dry race now. All the while that we've been under red flag, there's been no more rain. The track will be marginally drying up all the while. So for those that like a dry race as well as a wet race, we've got a bit of both today. Half the Grand Prix in the wet, tricky conditions has been absolutely action-packed from the start. Now we're going to have what should be a calmer second half, but with cars very much out of position, still tricky conditions because the temperature's so low. There will still be some damp parts offline, maybe on the curbs. Certainly the white lines will stay slippery. So the drivers are going to have to watch out, but we are now back in towards more normal conditions.
So, hashtag BBCF1 if you want to get in touch. Thank you to all of you who are doing so over the course of this Grand Prix. Great to have your interaction. We are going to be getting underway racing again in about 3 minutes' time. As we say, we're expecting them to go around behind the safety car, then line up on the grid, and then start the Grand Prix again.
Okay, speak on the board. Speak on the board. Take off the earplugs here. Take off the earplugs because I've got noise. Only earplugs, so I can speak but can't hear you.
Leclerc getting frustrated there, Jenny.
Yeah, he's having problems with his communications. Now, they had radio problems on Friday. That was down to a big technical glitch. But he's got problems at the moment. He's not being able to hear properly when they're speaking to him. He was on the radio just a bit before, just saying it's like somebody else is in his ears. He can't deal with it. So I think what he's asking for is to take his ears out so they can just talk to him on the pit wall, which is a high-risk strategy at the minute, because actually very hard, Jolyon, if you're in a car, to read what's on that pit board. Most of the drivers don't really see what's on there. He'll have to really look out for information.
They're not. There's pretty simple information that comes on the pit board. It'll be the gap to the car ahead or behind, the laps to go, and your position is pretty much all I'd ever have. The good news for Leclerc, this is quite a simple race now to the end. It'll be tricky for the drivers, the conditions, but we're not expecting any more pit stops. We're expecting a straight fight to the end of the race. 28 laps it'll be by the time we get around to the grid.
And so will everyone just do that on the mediums?
Everyone will do it on the mediums, I would have thought. So that there's not a huge necessity for communication. The major communication is calling strategy and pit stops, and that would have been intense on particularly the crossover from wets to inters to slicks earlier on. But now as the cars get released again, this is basically one of those 50% sprint races that Formula One looks set to introduce later on in the year.
Eve says, Jolyon bringing up Sergio Canamassas is a bit of a blast from the past. Wonder what he's up to these days. I had a look, and I think 2017 Formula 2 was his last season of racing, Sergio Canamassas. So there you go, bringing you up to date with all of the current affairs going on in the world of motorsport. The race is about to restart in a minute. The cars you can hear out on track are those that are going around to unlap themselves. So Stroll, Raikkonen, Hamilton, Tsunoda. Hamilton here, does he have a shot at the podium in the last 30 laps of this Grand Prix?
Yeah, I wouldn't rule him out. A car that will be fixed now. A Mercedes that was capable for pole position, which he took yesterday. He was capable of fighting for the race win, which he was doing until he dropped it down at Tosa and has left himself down in 9th. But that red flag has given him a huge chance. A safety car would have done a similar job, but a red flag means they can properly have a look over the car, get it back working, and now Lewis has just got to go into attack mode. We saw in Monza, actually, he charged through the field after he took that big penalty that dropped him basically to the back. He charged through the field and managed to salvage some good points. This time he's got to pass Raikkonen, Stroll, Ricciardo, Sainz, Perez before he can have a look at a podium, but he's got a car that can do it.
Just having a look at the drivers out there, it looks like Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri and Vettel in the Aston Martin have both chosen to go out on the soft tyres, everybody else on the medium. So it'd be fascinating to see what Tsunoda can do. He's up to 10th, starting last at the beginning of this race.
So the cars now, all of them, making their way out onto the race circuit with Verstappen at the head of the queue. Now this is different to the Mugello scenario with those lapped cars, because they came back out, they've come back through the pit lane. Now everyone's going to do a lap at safety car pace, so I don't think it's going to make too dramatic a difference in terms of tyre temperature for those drivers. It also looks fairly evenly dry on the start line, and mainly evenly dry through Tamburello. Oh, but it doesn't matter, because it will be a rolling restart, which is probably a sensible idea with only one racing line.
Yeah, the FIA have that power to declare it a rolling start if they rather than do the convention of a standing start. And actually, with the incident we've just seen with damp patches offline, particularly in the first sector, there's logic behind having that.
Yeah, fair enough. Lap 34 of 63. The order then, as we are about to go racing again. How come Hamilton and Tsunoda are showing as being ahead of Raikkonen?
Raikkonen's just dropped down. I'm not sure if it's a transponder issue, because he has been dropping around a little bit earlier on in the Grand Prix, or has he stopped somewhere?
He's at the end of the first sector. No, he's still moving out there, but he's gone off. But he does appear to be behind Hamilton and Tsunoda now.
Has Raikkonen gone off on this outlap?
I think he must have done it, Tamburello or Villeneuve chicane. So that's not great news for Kimi Raikkonen. He's lost a couple of places down to 10th spot. So the order is Verstappen, Leclerc, Norris, Perez, Sainz, the top 5. And then it is Ricciardo, Stroll, Hamilton, Tsunoda, Raikkonen, the top 10. Giovinazzi, Alonso, Ocon, Gasly, Vettel, the top 15. Schumacher and Mazepin still pootling around at the back in the Hasses, and I think they're both a lap down. Now, what happened to Raikkonen coming into Tamburello? Trying to get some heat into the tyre, comes through the left, and just spins the wheels up and goes fully spinning in the gravel. And that means that Hamilton and Tsunoda were able to pass him no problem.
Hamilton was miles back from him.
Spin for Verstappen! Verstappen spins, does he out of the race lead? No, he holds it! Absolutely remarkable! Max Verstappen almost spun out of the lead of the Grand Prix at the final corner, just as he's about to do the safety car restart. Now he's going to floor the throttle and get racing back underway once he's composed himself. Almost bins it again. Now he goes. Verstappen restarts the Grand Prix, and it's not a good start from Lando Norris. Sergio Perez in the Red Bull is going to try and attack him coming down to Tamburello, but meanwhile, as I say that, Norris is getting ahead of Leclerc. Norris on the soft tyres, on the outside, gets up into second place. Didn't look like a good restart initially, but Leclerc has got no pace out there at all, and off is Tsunoda. Yuki Tsunoda's in the gravel trap. Ocon is spinning across the circuit, but I think he managed to gather it all back up again. Verstappen leads, Norris second, Leclerc third, Perez fourth, fifth is Sainz, sixth is Ricciardo, seventh is Stroll, eighth is Hamilton, Raikkonen and Giovinazzi in ninth and 10th.
There are a few drivers on the soft there. Norris is one, and that allowed him to get great traction when Verstappen put the power down. Norris could react. He didn't react that well, but he had good drive with the softer tyres and could out-drag Charles Leclerc for second place at turn one. Sergio Perez is also on a soft tyre, as is Daniel Ricciardo, and they need to make the most of it right now because they're going to take some pain for this choice at the end of the race. Those soft tyres will be hanging on at the end of the Grand Prix. But yeah, great stuff from Norris up into second. Tsunoda was ahead of Hamilton when he lost it at Tamburello.
Oh, so he'd got him on the restart.
It got Hamilton on the restart and then dropped it coming through the first part, similar to Raikkonen on his out lap the lap before.
Verstappen at Ravazza won.
Wow, heart-in-mouth stuff for Max Verstappen. Obviously just trying to give it a little bit of juice on the rear and lighting it up too much. Broadside over the grass on the inside.
I was thinking if I was Leclerc, just go past him, take the lead of the Grand Prix, start the race and be, well, he was off the track.
I don't think he was fully off. I think he had two wheels on. It was super tight, but he almost could have just done it and just gone off for his own restart there, Leclerc. Such treacherous conditions, even in the dry. Still a dry line, but damp parts off it. And Verstappen got away with one big time there.
So, Max Verstappen leads the Grand Prix, 1.3 seconds ahead of Lando Norris. We're on lap 36 of 63 here on 5 Live Sports Extra, the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix in Italy, in Imola. And Verstappen is pulling away now, 1.5 seconds clear of Norris. Leclerc then. Norris didn't look like he got a good restart, but he almost got the slipstream slingshot from Charles Leclerc, managed to get ahead into Tamburello. Perez didn't make a huge amount of progress. He's another driver on the softs. It's Norris, Perez and Ricciardo that are the three drivers up at the front of the order that are on the soft tyres. Not sure what Lance Stroll is. It's not coming up on our screen, so I'll have to do the old-fashioned way and look with my eyes if we ever see Lance Stroll. But he's a second clear of Hamilton. Hamilton isn't exactly rapid on this restart.
No, he didn't get a good restart. Lost out to Tsunoda. And then Tsunoda spun the car off at the first corner, but Hamilton has not made any further progress other than past Kimi Raikkonen, who he actually would have started ahead because Raikkonen spun. So Hamilton's still down in 8th, still behind Lance Stroll, not immediately making progress. He needs to hope that some of these soft tyre runners are very slow at the end of the race.
Lap 37 of 63, Verstappen leading the way. Norris 1.5 seconds back. Then it's 2.5 seconds back from Verstappen to Leclerc. So it won't be too long before DRS is activated as well, I would have thought. And Verstappen, Norris will then be under pressure from Charles Leclerc. What can Sergio Perez do in the Red Bull? Hamilton, meanwhile, is stuck up behind Lance Stroll, who is on the medium tyres in the Aston Martin. So Hamilton started on pole position. He's now back in 8th place. How far back up the field can he climb?
He'll have Stroll when he has DRS, which will open, I think, at the end of this lap. He's within a second of Stroll, now starting to pick up a bit of pace on board with Lewis Hamilton on the dry line up towards Variante Alta, the right-left chicane. Lumps the curb on the right, nice and tidy through the left, and now he's just got to stay close to Stroll down this hill and through the two Ravazza corners and hopefully get a good slingshot to try and pass the Canadian on the main straight.
Max Verstappen sets another fastest lap of the Grand Prix, a 1:20.353, 4 tenths quicker than Norris in second place. There is still no DRS at the moment. Jenny.
Tyres, you should get 35 laps out of the soft tyre according to Pirelli, so they should be okay. You just might be with a bit more rubber on you if you've gone with a medium, which can get you 50 laps. And just on Norris, he said yesterday, I let everybody down. McLaren clearly looking at a different strategy to everybody else. They've gone with this soft tyre. They want to make this opportunity work for them.
Perez is in trouble. Sergio Perez, I think, is off at Tamburello. At the Villeneuve chicane. Perez is in the gravel. The Red Bull driver has spun out of contention. He's blasting his way out of the gravel trap now and rejoins the circuit, but he's down in 14th position, make that 15th position, because Mick Schumacher has just got past him in the Haas. Sergio Perez, presumably all by himself, has spun off at the Villeneuve chicane and has dropped from 4th position down to 14th position, and he's going to have a tough afternoon to get points.
He was close to Leclerc, about half a second back, but turns it left, turns it right, and just a big oversteer for Perez on the right-hand apex of the Villeneuve chicane.
No damage.
No damage. Big mistake.
Max Verstappen is leading this race now that the action is back underway. Lando Norris has managed to overtake Charles Leclerc, so the McLaren driver is remarkably up into 2nd position now. Leclerc is 3rd. Sergio Perez in the Red Bull was in 4th position, but he has just spun off into the gravel and is down into 14th place. It means Leclerc is 3rd, Sainz is 4th. Lewis Hamilton is trying to overtake Lance Stroll for 6th position now as he tries to climb back up the order, and he does it. The Mercedes driver up into 6th spot. He's about 3 seconds behind Daniel Ricciardo in the McLaren in 5th position. We're on lap 39 of 63. Jolyon Palmer, still a lot more to unfold.
Yeah, still a long way to go, but the conditions are getting better. Everyone on slick tyres now to the end of the race. And Hamilton's just cleared Lance Stroll. He's got to pass a few more drivers, Ricciardo, Sainz and Leclerc, before he can think about a podium. It was a nice move on Stroll, simple up the inside, but I think the next moves are going to be harder because all these guys are fighting for what could be the race of their season, a podium in an outsider car. That's what Hamilton's got coming up next.
Fascinating Grand Prix, full commentary on Sports Extra. I was about to say something. That Perez went off at the exact place Albon went off. There's a bit of spookiness from last year in Imola. Red Bull second car ghosts, or whatever you want to call it. But another fastest lap of the Grand Prix for Verstappen. Hamilton's on a good one though. Now he's in clear air. He's going to come across the line and set the fastest lap of the race, a 10th quicker than Verstappen, albeit down in 6th position. Here's Stroll's radio.
What's happening with the shifts?
It keeps losing sync at the moment, Lance. We're looking into it.
Chilled on the radio, isn't he, Lance Stroll?
Oh, I tell you, there's nothing chilled about losing sync with your gear shift. So when every single gear shift that you take is a slow shift, you keep just having like a hesitation on these what normally are seamless upshifts when you're going up. Think about how many upshifts you're doing from 3rd gear at times all the way through to 8th and then back down and then up through the gears again. Every single shift, if that's a delay there, you're losing a lot of lap time, and it's just so frustrating and difficult to drive around as well.
Do you try and shift earlier then to counteract that, or is that not possible?
Possibly. If you can try and keep the torque at a sensible level, then maybe, but really it's just the software on the car that's gone. Sergio Perez is also running through the gravel down at Ravazza. Yeah, it's a software thing on the car, and if it's slow, then there's not really a sensible way around it. It's just frustrating. I'm sure Aston Martin will be looking at to try and resolve it really quickly, because Stroll's still in a good position in 7th place.
Verstappen leads the Grand Prix, another fastest lap of the race, 4 seconds clear of Lando Norris. Norris is a second and a half ahead of Charles Leclerc, so he's doing a very solid job in 2nd position. Leclerc and Sainz is 3rd and 4th. Ricciardo is 5th. Hamilton is 6th, and he's closing in on Daniel Ricciardo rapidly, just a second between them. Antonio Giovinazzi pits. He was on the medium tyre for Alfa Romeo, so that's an interesting decision.
He was in 9th.
Yeah, he was in the points.
We have a problem on the brakes. We try to fix them pit stop position.
They got a brake problem. It looked like, was it just something covering the brakes or something on the rear?
Yeah, it looked like a bit of debris in the rear brake duct. That hurts for Giovinazzi. Alfa Romeo, home race for him as well. And he was looking like scoring some points. He's out. Now, remember Pierre Gasly from earlier on in the Grand Prix? Slithering around on those horrible wets early on. Took an extra pit stop, went to Inters, then went to Slicks, qualified 5th, tumbled down the order. He's up in 9th now. He's going to get some points out of this one, and maybe even more, no matter what comes. It's anything can happen in this Grand Prix.
Fernando Alonso nearly into the points. He's running in 11th place in the Alpine. The order is Verstappen, Norris, Leclerc, Sainz, Ricciardo, the top 5. Hamilton is now about a second behind Daniel Ricciardo. Then it's Stroll, Raikkonen, Gasly, Ocon. The rest of the point scorers in the top 10. Outside the top 10, Alonso, Vettel, Perez, Tsunoda, Giovinazzi, Schumacher and Mazepin. But both of the Haas drivers, I think, are a lap down. They were 2 laps down at the restart. And here comes Hamilton on Ricciardo. Ricciardo covers the inside, but Hamilton on the dry line sweeps around the outside of the McLaren driver. No problem at all. And Ricciardo is having that tough weekend is continuing, isn't it? Really, Norris is, I don't want to say showing him up, but sort of showing him up.
He is this weekend, that's for sure. Ricciardo was solid in Bahrain. Bit of damage which hurt his race, but out-qualified Lando just in Q3. But this weekend he's been shown the way, absolutely, by Norris, who's really been the star of the weekend, hasn't he? Nearly qualified the McLaren on the front row, ended up having a slight over track limits moment at turn 9, which cost him, and he started down in 7th, but he's recovered, he's up in 2nd. Team orders helped to pass Ricciardo, but he's got the pace.
Lap 42 of 63. Sainz is doing a solid job, keeping with Charles Leclerc at the moment, just 2 seconds behind his Ferrari teammate. Another fastest lap of the race set by race leader Max Verstappen. Hamilton now, his next target will be Carlos Sainz, and he is 3 seconds back from that Ferrari driver. Sound you can hear is Sebastian Vettel, who's trying to close in on Fernando Alonso. Hamilton now sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, 0.3 of a second faster than Verstappen in the lead of the race. Leclerc and Sainz running in 3rd and 4th pretty solidly.
The way that he's breezed past Stroll and then Ricciardo is encouraging for Hamilton and Mercedes. Overtaking not that hard for him right now. The pace he's got and this long straight that we're on right now, riding on board with Sebastian Vettel, it's allowing him a good shot into Tamburello. Ricciardo didn't fight him too hard, and neither did Stroll.
Lewis got Norris up in P2 at the moment on a soft tyre. That should start to drop off. Going to push them all back to you.
So there we go. Hamilton being told the target is P2, and if he recovers to 2nd place, that's going to be quite the recovery.
It will be. It will be aided certainly by the red flag. But if that's a poor day and a rare Hamilton error, and he's still finishing 2nd, you'd take that.
Jenny.
Hamilton and Mercedes really have been sort of talking up the fact that they like to be the hunter, not the hunted, that they like the challenge. Well, this is a race that's giving everybody the opportunity to just see what Mercedes can do when not leading, and what Hamilton can do when he's chasing the pack, and it's great to watch.
Certainly is. And we were going on after the first race, was that the best opening race of a Formula One season ever? Maybe, maybe not, who knows?
Is this the best second race of a season ever?
As far as first 2 races of a season go, this is a good start to a year.
Extraordinary start to a year, particularly after some of the non-title fighting years that we've had in recent times. We've got a proper challenge here from Red Bull and Verstappen. Verstappen's almost thrown it off from the lead. Hamilton has thrown it off from 2nd place. Even the best drivers are making mistakes on this extremely difficult day. And you still don't know what's going to happen.
Lap 44 of 63. Norris up 5 positions from his starting grid slot. Sainz up 7 positions. Raikkonen up 8 positions. The big losers, obviously, the 3 retirees, Bottas, Russell and Latifi, but also Perez, who's dropped 11 places. Sound you can hear is Hamilton bouncing over the curves at the top of the hill at the Variante Alta, and now dropping down towards Rivazza. He is 2.3 seconds back now from Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari.
Perez 13th and recovering slowly. One of those positions gained was on Giovinazzi, who's been through the pits. But what a costly mistake that could be for Red Bull. They could do with that second driver taking some points off Hamilton. Here's Tsunoda.
Yuki, we need to respect turn 9 track limit. Imperative.
So Tsunoda being told to respect the track limits up at Piratella, where Lando Norris got his lap time deleted previously. Perez is now on the back of Sebastian Vettel for 12th position. He's, I think, within the DRS range of the Ferrari driver in front, and he's closing in as they come towards Tamburello. Vettel covers the inside, Perez to the outside. Vettel braking on the wet part of the track, but still manages to hold on to the place. Nice work there from Vettel. Thought Perez was going to breeze past there.
Not yet, but he's looking quicker in the Red Bull. Teammate leading the race and pulling away with a 7.5 second gap. Perez has got to recover for some points, but yeah, he would have surely made Hamilton's charge very difficult to get beyond 4th place, which would have been a nice buffer to have. It's one thing for Hamilton passing an Aston Martin of Stroll, a McLaren of Ricciardo, who's not on his best weekend, We'll see what he does when he catches Sainz in the Ferrari, but he's not catching at an extraordinary rate at the moment. Just 4 tenths on the last lap, with Sainz doing his best lap of the Grand Prix. They come through again, and it's just 3 tenths, so his progress is halting slightly. But yeah, how Red Bull would love to have a second driver there.
Vettel wide at the top of the hill at the Variante Alta. Now dropping down into Ravazza. This isn't going to be an overtaking opportunity for Perez, but he still sort of half puts his nose up the inside. That'll cost his run out of the 2 Ravazzas, but he should be able to get past Sebastian Vettel here. The sound you can hear is the Honda engine in the back of that Red Bull. They come flashing over the start-finish straight. DRS wide open. Gasly has got ahead of Raikkonen, so Gasly is up into 8th position in the AlphaTauri. Still, Perez not able to make the move on Vettel here. Quick in a straight line, that Aston Martin.
It is. Very quick in a straight line. I thought that would be an easy one for Perez. Soft tyres for both. Vettel's on the soft as well. But Perez, he showed a nose at the inside of Ravazza 1. That might have hurt his run through the corner slightly, but I thought it would still be comfortable for him to pass Vettel on the start-finish straight. But good straight line speed, even with the DRS open and a slipstream. Perez not close enough, and he wasn't far back.
Sound you can hear now is Sergio Perez again. Fastest lap of the race from Max Verstappen. Now Norris, Leclerc, Sainz and Hamilton are all bunching up together. It's 1.1 seconds Norris to Leclerc, 1.2 seconds Leclerc to Sainz, 1.2 seconds Sainz to Hamilton. And Leclerc actually is in DRS range now, I think, and closing in on Norris as they come down towards Tamburello. Norris holds that second place for the time being, but Leclerc now is right up in the attack zone, I suppose, behind Lando Norris. Sergio Perez is again not super close to the back of the Aston Martin as he comes off Ravazza. He'll be closing in again this time as they come towards the Tamburello chicane. And if Vettel covers the inside, it's a better run this time for Perez by the looks of it. Goes to the outside. Can he get it done around the outside into Tamburello? He's on the wet stuff. He's bouncing over the curbs and he holds it. But Vettel comes back through. Really, really tricky to get side by side through there because half the track's wet.
Yeah, as soon as he missed the apex, then he was slithering wide onto the curb that Hamilton hit on the opening lap, and almost spun again when he rejoined the track into the right-hand bar to Tamburello. And then Vettel flashed by once again. Really frustrating for Perez this. This is only for 12th position. Still got a way to go to get towards a point. Oh, was there contact? It was so close with Vettel. Don't think there was, but it was by the finest of margins.
That's unbelievable. Their wheels were interlocked, the two of them, and they both managed to avoid each other. Perez bouncing over those yellow sausages, and Vettel, look at that. He sort of cut back behind Perez with no margin for error at all. Perez is all crossed up coming through. That was great stuff. Lap 48 of 63. Verstappen leading, 11 seconds clear of Norris, but now Leclerc is in Norris's DRS range. Sainz is right up behind Leclerc. Hamilton is right up behind Sainz. Norris, Leclerc and Sainz and Hamilton separated by about 3 seconds.
So Hamilton's actually only 3 seconds off second place at this point. Problem is he's got a few cars there. The next problem is everyone's going to have DRS soon in that. It's going to be a DRS train from Norris back to Hamilton. So he's not going to have a big closing speed to try and make the move happen on cars ahead. He needs to hope that Sainz can just stay more than a second adrift of Leclerc. Leclerc will have DRS on Norris. He's within a second at the moment, although he slithers slightly wide out of Variante Alta. But the car's closing up is good because it keeps second place within reach of Hamilton. No one's stretching away. But on the other hand, it makes each individual pass a little bit harder.
Perez gets past Sebastian Vettel this time around the outside at Tamburello. Tsunoda is now the next driver to try and pass Sebastian Vettel. He really closed in on those two while they were squabbling. But that vroom, vroom, vroom you just heard was Leclerc, Sainz and Hamilton. And actually, Sainz doesn't have DRS here because he's not close enough to Leclerc. Hamilton does. The Mercedes dives to the outside. Leclerc is not giving him any room, and Hamilton onto the damp stuff. Sainz isn't giving him any room. Hamilton gets onto the damp stuff and drops back this time. So Norris still second, Leclerc still third, Sainz still fourth, Hamilton still fifth.
Problem is, as soon as you get wide, once again, you're running out of grip. It's very difficult to make a pass because there really is one dry line And even though we've had a red flag and a bit of a delay and we've not had any further rain, offline it's not drying that quickly. Remember, Hamilton went off because he went offline just trying to lap Russell's Williams earlier on. He knows how slippery it is, and he just found out for a second time there, trying to pass Sainz on the outside. Dry line coming into the corner on the conventional racing line, but as soon as you go wide of the apex, you're struggling for a bit of grip, and Sainz held on to the place.
Max Verstappen leading the Grand Prix. Norris over the crest and down to Rivazza. Leclerc is following him in that scarlet Ferrari. Then it's Carlos Sainz in the 55 Ferrari behind. Hamilton might get the DRS this time. Sainz won't. He's not close enough to Leclerc. Hamilton does, I think, and is closing in again. So round 2, down to Tamburello, the first chicane. Hamilton to the outside. Sainz on the inside, and he gets the job done this time, Hamilton. Up into 4th position now. That was a fairly straightforward move in the end, and he's up into 4th place, 1.2 seconds back from Charles Leclerc. 2nd place in this race, perfectly doable for Hamilton.
Had it done in a straight line, really, that time. Didn't need to brave it around the outside through the corner because he was already ahead by the time he got there. That Mercedes engine's got some grunt. We're seeing that in the back of the Aston Martin, and again, Hamilton just ahead of Sainz before the braking zone for the corner.
Happy with that, Lewis. Let's get after it, mate.
Pete Bonington say we're happy with that, and Hamilton is on course to set the fastest lap of the race now. He's got clear air.
Leclerc definitely has DRS at the moment on Norris, so that will make things slightly harder. Every lap that Leclerc is within DRS range of Norris, Hamilton won't have such a big closing speed as he did on his teammate. The problem Sainz had is he was 1.3 seconds adrift of his teammate and just outside that zone.
Getting quite a few vibrations. I don't know what from.
Norris saying he's getting quite a few vibrations. He doesn't know what from. He comes across the line now. Norris, Leclerc, Hamilton. 1, 2, 3. Hamilton, fastest lap of the Grand Prix. And fastest lap point is going to be a genuine one here. We're not going to have any, pit stops on the last lap to set a fastest lap point, as we did in Bahrain with Bottas doing that. So between Verstappen and Hamilton, if Hamilton gets back up into 2nd place, whichever of those two sets the fastest lap will lead the championship. Jenny.
Ferrari currently 3rd with Leclerc and 5th with Sainz, and it has to be said they are still deficient when it comes to the straight, so they don't have as much grunt, as much power on the straight lines as some of the other cars and power units around them. But Ferrari will be looking at this. They've got to be pleased with where they are now compared to last year.
Yeah, undoubtedly, but I think the important thing for Leclerc, or one of the things for Leclerc, is if he can stay in the DRS range of Norris, then that'll kind of nullify the DRS advantage of Hamilton.
It's the best defence he can have, maybe the only defence he can have from a charging Lewis Hamilton, is to be close enough to Norris. Frustratingly close, because he can't pass the McLaren man ahead, who of course has Mercedes engines in the back of the McLaren this year, and they're working nicely. Norris is driving beautifully. Leclerc's got to stay within the DRS range, otherwise one sniff and I'm sure Hamilton's going to be through.
Across the line they come then. Again, Norris, Leclerc and Hamilton, 2nd, 3rd and 4th. Hamilton has DRS on Leclerc. Leclerc has it on Norris as well, and Hamilton is still closing in despite that, but not quite enough. But the three of them are right together as they come through the Tamburello chicane. Verstappen leading, Norris 2nd, Leclerc 3rd, Hamilton 4th, Raikkonen 5th, Ricciardo 13 seconds off this battle. It's remarkable. Ricciardo this afternoon and this weekend. Stroll 7th, Gasly 8th, Raikkonen 9th, only just ahead of Esteban Ocon in 10th position in the Alpine. Alonso has Sergio Perez right behind him now for 11th place, and then it's Vettel, Tsunoda, Giovinazzi, Schumacher and Mazepin, the 17 drivers still running. Bottas and both Williams of Russell and Latifi out of the Grand Prix.
Ricciardo on soft tyres, and I think he's actually struggling on them now. He's been caught by Stroll and Gasly just behind, so he might be looking in his mirrors even more before the race is over. Perez was on the soft tyres as well. He had a spin and is still trying to recover. He's on the tail of Fernando Alonso now for 11th. The other man that started on the soft tyres, remember, was Lando Norris, who used them to pass Leclerc on the restart. But with every lap, those tyres have been getting a little bit worse and worse, and that's why he's under this big pressure for 2nd place. He was faster than Leclerc in qualifying. He's been faster all weekend, but he's not on the optimum tyres at this point in the Grand Prix.
Hamilton closing in again on the back of Charles Leclerc. He's going to have a good opportunity here coming towards Tamburello. Is Leclerc going to cover the inside? He just holds the middle ground, and Hamilton has to slot in behind in 4th position. Here's a great stat from Laura Leslie. actually is a question, Jolien. When was the last time a non-Mercedes or non-Sebastian Vettel led the Drivers' World Championship?
It's got to be Fernando Alonso in a Ferrari, hasn't it?
2013 Australian Grand Prix after Kimi Raikkonen won the race.
Raikkonen in a Lotus.
Yeah, that was the last time it wasn't Vettel or a Mercedes driver leading the Formula One World Championship. Remarkable. Verstappen leading, 15 seconds clear of Norris. Hamilton only 6/10 behind Charles Leclerc now. This is going to be close, this one, because Hamilton still seems to have the advantage. Even if Leclerc has DRS, he's still getting good runs on Leclerc.
This could be the one for Hamilton. Leclerc's perilously close to dropping more than a second away from Norris, 9/10 as they come down the hill towards the Ravazzas at the end of the lap. Hamilton's also just dropped slightly further back from Leclerc, though. He's got some closing speed. That Mercedes is so fast in the straights, he might have another chance here.
Down towards Tamburello, the Ferrari in third place of Charles Leclerc. The sound you can hear is the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton. Closing as they come towards the chicane, but nowhere near close enough on that time around, really, for Hamilton. It's going to need Leclerc. Leclerc almost needs to get past Norris for Hamilton to have a chance at getting past the two cars in front. But we've still got 10 laps to go in this Grand Prix, and Hamilton is not going to give up.
I think there's a greater chance of Hamilton picking off both of them than Leclerc passing Norris at this stage.
Make sure he has blue flags, the guy ahead.
And that is, I think, Antonio Giovinazzi, who is the driver in front of them.
Schumacher.
Yeah, you're right. That's what I thought. It's Mick Schumacher who is in front of them in the Haas car.
Just, you can hear the pressure that Norris is under by his voice there, just trying to eradicate anything else that can go wrong and focus on what you've got to do. He's got Mick Schumacher just ahead and just ensuring that he gets the blue flags nice and early. He's pulled away from Leclerc on this lap, though. That might end up being Lando's downfall if Hamilton passes Leclerc, because he's going to be under huge pressure now.
Slide from Hamilton at the first part of the Ravazza. Is Leclerc getting the DRS here? No. Leclerc is under big pressure now for third place. Hamilton in the Mercedes, right in the slipstream with the DRS, and this is going to be easy. Hamilton breezes past around the outside, and the Mercedes driver is up into third place. And as you say, ironically, that could be the end of Norris's second position as well. And we'll see, because Hamilton is a second behind, but it will still be potentially a podium for Norris nevertheless. But he's still getting frustrated because he's got Nikita Mazepin now, I think, in front of him, and then Mazepin dives out of the way in the Haas, no problem at all. So Norris in second, Hamilton third, Leclerc fourth, Sainz in fifth. Straightforward that for Hamilton.
That was the one moment. All he needed was Leclerc to drop out of the DRS range of Norris.
This is awesome work, Lewis. Come on. Got Norris ahead, P2.
P2 is the encouraging message on the radio for Hamilton.
And he's cleared the line of cars. Norris will not be having DRS. So this next move, in theory, could be easier. He's got a Mercedes engine rather than a Ferrari that does seem a little slower on the straight. But can Lando keep his compatriot behind for another 7 laps? It's going to be really tough.
Across the line they come to start lap 56 of 63. Hamilton not in DRS range on this lap, just outside of it, so Norris holds on to second place for the time being. His best career finish is a third spot. Lando Norris at the 2020 Austrian Grand Prix, first race of last year. But Hamilton is closing right in. Jenny?
Yeah, Lando yesterday on Twitter was really hard on himself, and actually Hamilton tweeted back saying, "No one can knock you for giving it your all. Amazing lap. It's great to see you and the team shine. Move
Lap
on,
56 of 63 here in the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. Max Verstappen is leading the way. He's 18 seconds clear of everyone else, but Hamilton has carved through the field. He was 9th after his crash earlier on. He's now got up into third place and is right on the back of Lando Norris for second. Full commentary on Sports Extra. As it stands, Verstappen will be picking up 26 points and moving to the lead of the championship. But can Hamilton get back ahead of Norris? Up towards the Variante Alta they come.
I think he just got a little bit wide on the exit of Acqua Minerale there, which has dropped him back another car length from Norris. He will probably get the DRS this time around, though. 8/10 back with 2 corners to go. If he can just keep it tight through these left-handers at Ravazza. That's the first one. and just blend out of the throttle and get back on it for the second one. 8/10 behind now. He'll get DRS, but is he close enough? And what is his straight line speed like compared to the McLaren with the same engine ahead?
So he started this sequence 0.8 of a second away. He's closing, and he dives to the inside, but not close enough. Norris holds the middle ground, so 0.8 away off the second part of Ravazza isn't close enough for Hamilton. He needs to be closer than that if he wants to make the move.
If Norris can hold him back for the rest of this race, it will be marvellous from the McLaren man. He's so quick on the straights, Hamilton. He's in a very fast car. He's driving nicely, and he's got no one else in the way of him and the orange McLaren ahead. 0.8 is very doable. Leclerc was running about that distance from Norris the whole time, but didn't have the straight line speed to take advantage of it. He's so close, 7/10 now. This could be the lap immediately.
Here they come up towards the Variante Alta, the high chicane at the highest point on the circuit, bouncing over the curbs and then starting to drop down towards Ravazza. He's about 0.8 of a second away as they come down into Ravazza 1 and 2. Onto the brakes, into the first left, then into the second left. Norris just needs to try and keep it neat and tidy. Out they come, and the gap is about the same as it was last time. Hamilton will get the DRS again. He was close to Norris last time they came through at this distance. He's going to be close again as they come down to Tamburello, and Norris is well up for fighting this, covers the inside, holds the position for the time being. But because this is not a long game thing now for Norris. We're on lap 58 of 63. There's 6 laps to go. This isn't, so often in the early stages of a Grand Prix, if a Mercedes coming up behind you on a charge back through the order, fine, through you go. I've got my own race to do. This is Norris's race, these last 6 laps for second position. And even with them fighting, the Ferraris aren't there. Leclerc 4th, Sainz 5th are 2 seconds back now.
Yeah, he's got the measure of the Ferraris, that's for sure. He's shown that, even though he's been on the soft tyres.
Oh, Gasly's been off on the exit of the first Ravazza. Hasn't lost any places, I don't think. Stays in 8th position ahead of Kimi Raikkonen's Alfa Romeo. So Gasly gets away with that one.
His adventurous race so far continues for Gasly, still in 8th, and somehow looks like he's going to be taking 4 points away from this Grand Prix.
Down to Ravazza again we come. The 2 crucial corners on the circuit for Hamilton to try and be close enough to get the run on Norris, but it's about the same again. This time as they come over the start-finish straight towards the Tamburello chicane, the quick left-right that is at the end of this straight, but Hamilton is really closing in this time around. Norris covers the inside again. At what point? Now this is where you get into these questions of, is it worth Hamilton going for second place? Is it worth an absolutely all or nothing, do or die lunge? We were speaking about this in our preview podcast for this weekend. The olden days of Hamilton, he's just going to lunge this and send it and no problem at all. Is third better than crashing?
Oh, clutch slip in the middle of corners. The corner throttle, it just doesn't, no drive.
Lando Norris then getting some clutch slip in the middle of the corners, so he's not getting as much drive as he would have wanted. But yeah, how important is second place for Hamilton?
3 points, possibly 4, if it gives him some clear air and a nice shot at fastest lap as well. You've got to go for it. He's got the car that can do it. I don't think we're going to see a crazy lunge from him.
Lando, you're knocking the paddle, the left paddle.
So Norris being told you're, I don't know, gripping the steering wheel so hard that you're knocking the clutch paddle. Here he comes now into the left-hander at Ravazza, and Hamilton's closer this time. Norris gets right up to the curb on the exit, but Hamilton has about 1/10 of a second closer than he was the last few times around. Is this Hamilton's opportunity? Lap 60 of 63, looking for second place on the McLaren. Norris covers the inside, Hamilton to the outside. They're wheel to wheel into Tamburello, but Hamilton gets it done on the brakes. Lewis Hamilton around the outside of Lando Norris, the Mercedes driver, back up into second place, and as it stands would just be 1 point behind Max Verstappen in the battle for the championship lead. Hamilton gets the job done. Just that 1/10 of a second though turned an impossible pass into an easy pass.
Yeah, because you're closer the whole way down the straight. The slipstream effect is just greater for the entire length of a very long start-finish straight. He just needs one moment, doesn't he, Hamilton? He's had it with everyone. One chance to just get side by side properly into the corner, and he was committed on the brakes as well to take second.
He's too quick for me.
Yeah, he probably is.
He's going to get fastest lap on this one as well.
Okay.
Verstappen crosses the line, does fastest lap on a 1:17.5. Hamilton's had a nice DRS, and then the racing line into turn 1. He's on the fastest first sector and second sector. This might be his extra point.
Here comes Hamilton out across the line, and he goes quicker than Verstappen by 0.8 of a second. Huge lap there from Lewis Hamilton. He'll have been aided probably by having DRS down the start-finish straight. That'll have given him a bit of an advantage. But as it stands, Hamilton would lead the World Championship by 1 point. Jenny?
Yeah, I just have to say on Norris's behalf, what a fantastic drive. People worried with Ricciardo next to him.
And 3 laps remaining. That is fastest lap. Nice work, Lewis.
Continue.
Sorry, Bonington just congratulating Lewis. Yeah, people worried that Ricciardo would basically swallow Norris up, and that might be the last we'd see of Norris in his McLaren career. But you know what? He's really pushing it. He's out there. Ricciardo's struggling with the tyres at the moment, but Norris, really impressive showing.
Ricciardo might get done by Stroll here. They're coming down towards Tamburello. Ricciardo just about holds on to that 6th position, but Stroll is putting Ricciardo under big pressure. Really, the difference between the two McLaren drivers this weekend has been quite astonishing.
23 seconds in 24 laps.
Yeah.
Is a huge difference, and Ricciardo was ahead earlier on. Again, that move for McLaren just to swap the places, it makes complete sense now because they're looking at a podium finish with Lando still.
It's a yellow flag out there in sector 2, so just trying to see, that was Ricciardo, Stroll and Gasly were all coming through that middle sector at the time.
Mazepin.
Oh yeah, Mazepin was coming through sector 2 as well, and yes, he's missed part of the track, so you're right, Nikita Mazepin's had a moment. Penultimate lap of the race, Max Verstappen is pushing to try and get fastest lap again, but without DRS it's going to be tough to match that Mercedes lap time.
Yeah, he's lost 0.2 in the first sector. I don't think it's an accident that Hamilton did the fastest lap with DRS passing Norris. He will have known that gave him a nice advantage down the straight. So much straight line speed.
Mazepin slid wide at the second Aqua Minerale and then carried on his way.
Yeah, just on his own there, turned it in, and the rear went. Tough day for him. Yeah, Hamilton then I think just gave it absolute full beans for the rest of the lap, knowing he'd had a good advantage down to turn 1, and has done fastest lap. And I don't know if Verstappen's going to be able to respond. He's got a lot to find.
Here he comes through the final corner. Here's Vettel's radio.
So we need to retire the car in the garage, so box. The gearbox is getting worse, so just try to minimise your shifts and box.
Sebastian Vettel's race ends where it started, in the pit lane in 14th position, but now will be out of the Grand Prix. Verstappen didn't set the fastest lap of the race. He's trying again on this final lap. He's 22 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton. He's going to win the Grand Prix, but he's not going to take the lead of the championship. Hamilton is still going to hold on to it by 1 solitary point before we head to the next Grand Prix of the season, which I can't even remember where it is.
Portugal.
Portimao in 2 weeks. I'm so excited for it. Can't remember where it is.
You haven't looked beyond this one yet.
No, exactly. I'm, one race at a time, Jolien. One race at a time.
From the Nico Rosberg school of thought.
Yeah.
This is going to be a victory for Red Bull. But as victories go in the 2021 season, I mean, I get the sense this could be the most bitter victory that Red Bull could have.
Yeah.
With Lewis Hamilton losing about a minute in the gravel. He hit the wall at Tosa. He was down to 9th, out of the Grand Prix contention. He's now back to 2nd with the fastest lap, 2 points in it.
Max Verstappen through the final corner at Imola. The Emilia Romagna Grand Prix is won by Red Bull. It's won by Max Verstappen. The championship fight in only the 2nd round of the season is absolutely on fire. Hamilton recovers after a difficult race to finish 2nd. He still leads the championship by 1 point, but Red Bull and Verstappen are bringing the fight to Mercedes. Hamilton through the final turn now, sees the checkered flag. He put it in the gravel, he stuck it in the wall. He had damage on the opening lap after a crash with Verstappen, but he's still come through to finish in 2nd. Brilliant drive from Lando Norris to finish in 3rd spot for the McLaren team. Leclerc and Sainz 4th and 5th for Ferrari. Daniel Ricciardo is just going to hold on to 6th for the McLaren, I would have thought, although he's just coming down to Ravazza, should be able to hold off Lance Stroll there. Easy drive for Verstappen though. Here's his radio.
Okay, Max, great work.
Checkered flag has fallen at the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix at Imola. Max Verstappen takes the win. Hamilton recovered to 2nd, having crashed out all by himself in the wet, slippery conditions earlier on. He still leads the championship by just 1 point. Verstappen wins the race. Verstappen then cruising back to the pit lane. Good drive from Verstappen, impressive drive from Verstappen, dominant drive from Verstappen, really.
Wasn't dominant for the first half against all but one, but Hamilton put it off, and that gave Max the open goal he needed. Even more so, Lando Norris, who was stunning today, getting into second on a soft tyre, meant that Verstappen was never going to be chased.
That's P3. P3. Great job, mate. Well done. P3.
Yeah, let's go! Awesome.
What a redemption story for Lando Norris. Should have been third on the grid yesterday. Fluffed his lines, went wide up at Piratella, had to start down in 7th place. But from the off, gaining places, carving through the field, and to finish in 3rd place, that's about as best as he could have hoped for this weekend.
He's barely put a foot wrong. He's put an inch wrong of track limits, and that's it for Lando this weekend. Sensational the whole way through. The race could have been so much easier for him were it not for that inch that cost him 3rd place, and instead he started 7th. But in the wet conditions, flying, good overtakes and good in the dry.
Nice work, Lewis. That is an awesome recovery. Great battle back to B2.
Lewis, super drive. We're leading the championship.
Awesome job, guys. My apologies for that mistake earlier on, but we live and we learn. On to the next one.
Indeed, mate. Indeed.
2 races in, Red Bull, the fastest car in both races. Is that fair to say? And Hamilton leads the championship by a point?
I don't think it's fair to say.
No?
How can we know the Red Bull's the faster car today? Hamilton was quicker than Verstappen, I think. At the end, in the wet, he was catching. We didn't get a fair comparison maybe, but Verstappen wasn't able to get close to Hamilton's fastest lap. Maybe he didn't give it an absolute full beans go. Hamilton was roaring today. He was super quick. Remember, he had damage early on as well. Bottas wasn't at the races, but Hamilton is getting the most out of that Mercedes, barring a moment at Tosa, and that fight would have gone down to the wire, I'm sure.
Absolute elation for the McLaren team. Carlos Sainz, what's his name? Lando Norris. We've been on air a long time now. Lando Norris jumping in with the rest of the team, high-fiving all around, hugs all around with Andreas Seidel, the team principal. Brilliant performance from him. Norris 4th, Leclerc 4th, Sainz 5th, Ricciardo 6th, Stroll 7th, Gasly 8th, Raikkonen 9th, Esteban Ocon in 10th position, Alonso, Perez, Tsunoda, Giovinazzi and Vettel the top 15. Schumacher and Mazepin take the checkered flag in 16th and 17th places. Bottas, Russell and Latifi out of the Grand Prix. Only 3 drivers out of the race in the end, which is quite impressive, to be honest. And here you can hear the applause from the Mercedes team. A high five with Hamilton.
Verstappen will be
and
gutted, I think, to see Hamilton alongside him. Such an easy end to the race for Max. He will have known, remember, the red flag, he'll have known that Hamilton's been in the wall, he's a lap down, he's in 9th place, and suddenly he's back into 2nd, and he's still the leader of the championship with that fastest lap point.
How lucky was Hamilton today?
He was very fortunate. He was very fortunate that the red flag came at the time it did, caused by his teammate crashing with another Mercedes protege in George Russell. The two of them tangled, and it saved Hamilton's race, undoubtedly. But there's one thing being a bit lucky with the timing of that. There's another thing making the most of it. And given a second chance, he absolutely took it.
And when you consider, I suppose, Jenny, Hamilton carving through the field compared to Bottas's progress in the early stages, it's quite stark.
Everybody says, don't they, that Lewis Hamilton, even Verstappen admitted at the end of last year that Lewis Hamilton makes the difference. It's no coincidence that he's happened to win 7 world titles. He's one of the best drivers ever in Formula One history. He makes the difference in a car, but this dynamic is fascinating this year. Lando Norris looks over the moon. Of course he is the McLaren driver to be P3, and Hamilton looked delighted for him to be there as well after his heartbreak yesterday. It's a very... I don't know, it's a real intense fight between these drivers, but actually there's genuine support for each other at times as well. It's a weird mix this year.
Yeah, Norris is still 3rd in the championship, actually. But let's hear from our top 3, starting with our race winner, Max Verstappen, who is speaking to Martin Brundle.
Congratulations, Max. That was a wild afternoon, but you had it covered. A great victory.
Yeah, it was very challenging out there, especially in the beginning. It was very hard to stay on track, to be honest. It was very slippery. And then, of course, with the tyres degrading in the wet, and then choose the right moment to go into slicks is never easy. So I think we managed everything well. Then a little moment in my restart.
Yeah, that was so close.
But yeah, and everything else went really well today, so of course very happy with that.
What happened on the restart just before after the red flag? Just trying to warm the tyres?
Yeah, a little moment when I was just trying to warm it with throttle, but yeah, luckily we didn't spin.
But you had a wonderful run down to the first corner and the original start to take the lead.
Yeah, I was surprised myself. I mean, last year we've been struggling a little bit off the line, but I think we worked really hard to make that better. And already, of course, you saw that in Bahrain, but now in these tricky conditions, I think we did a great job.
Well done. Lewis just took the fastest lap towards the end, so he's still a point ahead of you in the World Championship, but you're right back in there.
Yeah, but it's a long season.
Absolutely.
So we have to stay calm.
Congratulations. Stay calm indeed. Wow, Lewis. Where do we start on that race? I mean, congratulations for bringing it back in second place.
Thank you. Well, first, congratulations to Max. He did a fantastic job today, and just solid work from him, and also to Lando. You know, what an awesome job, and so great to see McLaren back up there. Yeah, on my side, it was not the greatest of days. It's the first time I've made a mistake in a long time, but I'm grateful I was able to bring the car home still.
Well, take us through that little error at Tosa. You were passing some lapped cars.
Yeah, so there was only one dry line, and I guess in a bit too much of a hurry to get by everyone, and I came onto the inside and I could see it was wet, and I was trying to stop, but the thing wouldn't stop and sent me off. And a bit unfortunate, but I'm really, really grateful that we got to get going again, and that's, to get some points for the team was really important today.
So during the red flag break, did you ever imagine you'd actually still be leading the World Championship and you'd finish second?
I wasn't thinking about it. I was just trying to get over the gutting kind of feeling it is when you make a mistake, and just moving on from it and just learning from it real quick, and you don't have time to dwell on it, so that's what I did. Get back into racing spirit, and yeah, I didn't know whether or not we'd be able to overtake, because again offline was going to be wet, but still had some really good fun battles with all the guys.
Great race, great drive. Thank you. Lando on the podium again, second time. Whoa, that was you were really having to defend hard, but your pace was so strong.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm happy. I think a nice recovery after yesterday. It was a long race, a tough one, but I didn't start so well. It was a tough start, but I came back through. I had good pace. I tried hanging on to second, but Lewis was a bit too quick for me today. So yeah, it's nice to be fighting these guys. It's nice to be there on merit and there on pure pace.